Understanding Your Natural Gifts. Audiobook version. By Rocko Williams. Part 1. Defining Natural Gifts. What natural gifts are and what they are not. Natural gifts are not just things you happen to be good at. They are deep structural patterns in how your mind, body, and emotions engage with reality. They shape what you notice first, how you solve problems, where your attention returns, and which kinds of effort feel strangely efficient. A natural gift exists before training, persists across different environments, and continues operating even when you are not consciously trying to use it. From the inside, natural gifts feel ordinary. You do not experience your own perception as special. You experience it as just how it is. If you quickly see patterns in behavior, systems, or symbols, that way of seeing feels self-evident, not exceptional. Other people may be impressed, confused, or unsettled by what is obvious to you, but to you it feels normal, and therefore easy to dismiss or undervalue. Natural gifts are also different from preferences and fantasies. Wanting to be a musician, healer, or strategist does not mean you are organically wired for it. Desire can intersect with a gift, but it cannot create one where none exists. A real gift shows up as reliable performance under varied conditions, even when you are tired, stressed, or not trying to impress. A fantasy collapses as soon as pressure, complexity, or sustained practice arrive, exposing that the underlying structure is weak or absent. They are also distinct from trauma adaptations. Hypervigilance, people-pleasing, or compulsive planning can resemble insight, empathy, or strategic thinking, but they are fueled by tension, fear, or control. A natural gift still functions when you feel safe and grounded. An adaptation weakens or becomes unnecessary as healing progresses, revealing whether there is an authentic capacity underneath or not. At its core, a natural gift is an efficient way your system interfaces with complexity and change. It does not make you better than others. It makes you unusually suited to certain kinds of problems and environments. Naming that reality clearly is not arrogance. It is the first practical step toward using what you already are in a deliberate, grounded, and responsible way. Why most people never discover their natural gifts. Most people never truly discover their natural gifts because the systems they grow up in prioritize conformity over differentiation. Families, schools, and workplaces often value predictability, obedience, and standardized performance more than nuanced self-knowledge. Children quickly learn which behaviors are praised and which are punished, and they begin shaping themselves around external expectations rather than internal wiring. Over time, this training becomes invisible, masquerading as personality. Early expressions of giftedness rarely look refined. Strong pattern recognition may show up as overthinking. Deep empathy may appear as being too sensitive. A strategic mind may look argumentative or non-compliant. Because these early forms are raw and uncontained, adults often respond with correction instead of curiosity. The child then associates the gift's expression with trouble, embarrassment, or rejection, and begins to mute or disguise it. Fear deepens the problem. Discovering a natural gift implies the possibility of change, responsibility, and deviation from the familiar path. Many people sense that fully acknowledging their gifts would mean leaving misaligned roles, upsetting certain relationships, or stepping into terrain where there are no guarantees. Avoiding that disruption can feel safer than confronting the implications of their own capacity, so they unconsciously look away. Another obstacle is the confusion between competence and alignment. People become very good at things they were pressured or paid to do, and they assume this must be who they are. They build identities around learned strengths while quietly ignoring areas where they experience unusual ease, depth, or speed. Competence then becomes a mask, hiding the deeper architecture of the gift underneath. In the end, most people are not lacking in gifts. They are lacking in environments, languages, and mirrors that help them recognize what has been there all along. Without that recognition, their lives can be functional yet unfulfilled, busy yet strangely disconnected from what feels most real inside. Nature, conditioning, and the core tension. The story of natural gifts lives inside the tension between nature and conditioning. Nature refers to the native configuration of your nervous system, how you process information, feel emotion, track patterns, and regulate energy. Conditioning refers to the external pressures that train you to act a certain way. Family expectations, cultural norms, educational systems, and survival strategies. When these two forces line up, life feels strangely coherent. When they clash, you experience friction that is easy to misdiagnose as personal failure. As children, we rarely have the safety or power to honor nature over conditioning. Belonging is more urgent than authenticity. A child whose perception or sensitivity threatens the stability of the family system will almost always shrink or distort themselves to preserve connection. They learn to mute what others cannot handle and exaggerate what others reward. After enough repetition, these compromises harden into identity, and the original wiring is pushed out of awareness. This creates a subtle but chronic inner conflict. Part of you wants to follow the pathways that feel natural, and another part is trained to shut those pathways down. You may feel restless in roles that look good on paper, or inexplicably drained by tasks you can perform well. You might cycle between periods of compliance and sudden rebellion, not realizing you are negotiating between conditioning and something deeper that refuses to go away. The tension often shows up as self-criticism. Instead of recognizing misalignment, you tell yourself you are lazy, scattered, insufficiently grateful, or perpetually dissatisfied. You try to fix your attitude instead of questioning whether the structure around you fits your actual design. In doing so, you protect the conditioning and pathologize the nature. Understanding this dynamic changes the question from "what is wrong with me?" to "where am I still living from adaptation rather than from my authentic configuration?" When you begin to take nature seriously, not as an excuse, but as data, you create the conditions for your natural gifts to reemerge, this time with more maturity, context, and choice. Talent, skill, gift, and capacity defined. To work cleanly with natural gifts, it is essential to distinguish between talent, skill, gift, and capacity. Talent is an early emerging ease in a specific activity or domain. A child who picks up rhythm quickly or grasps spatial relationships intuitively is showing talent. Skill is learned competence. It is what develops through deliberate practice, feedback, and repetition. Almost anyone can acquire skill with enough time and structure, whether or not a deeper gift is present. A natural gift is more foundational. It is a persistent pattern in how you think, feel, perceive, and respond. It sits underneath talent and skill, shaping which skills grow easily, which feel heavy, and which seem to unlock entire families of competence once they are developed. Someone may have a natural gift for pattern recognition, and that same gift can express as talent in mathematics, systems design, music composition, or strategic leadership when paired with training. Capacity describes the range of potential that gift could reach under sustained, aligned development. Two people may share a similar gift, but their capacity, the breadth and depth of what they could eventually do with it, can differ based on health, environment, resources, trauma load, and life choices. Capacity is not fixed, but it is not infinite either. It expands when you respect your wiring and contracts when you chronically violate it. Problems arise when people mistake skill for gift or gift for destiny. You can become highly skilled at something that does not match your core structure, especially if the world rewards you for it. You can also possess a powerful natural gift that remains unskilled, undeveloped, and invisible to others. Recognizing the difference prevents you from worshiping the wrong metric. The real leverage comes from identifying the underlying gift, then deliberately choosing which talents and skills to build around it. When you see these layers clearly, you stop asking, "What should I be good at?" and start asking, "What kind of thinker, feeler, and perceiver am I by design? And what roles, skills, and contexts best honor that reality?" Why natural gifts often appear as problems first. Natural gifts often show up as problems long before they look like strengths. A child with strong emotional attunement may become overwhelmed by the moods in a room and be labeled dramatic or clingy. A child with powerful pattern recognition might question rules, point out inconsistencies, or anticipate trouble and be seen as negative, anxious, or defiant. Raw giftedness is intense and unrefined. It rarely arrives in a form that makes adults feel comfortable. Because early expressions are clumsy, the environment responds with correction instead of guidance. The message received is, "When you show up like this, you cause problems." The child learns to either suppress the capacity, distort it, or turn it inward. Over time, the gift does not vanish. It becomes entangled with shame, fear, or confusion. The very structure that could have become a stabilizing force turns into a private battleground. These misinterpretations often follow people into adulthood. A naturally perceptive person may assume they are paranoid. A highly intuitive person may believe they are irrational. Someone with a gift for seeing systemic dysfunction may conclude they are simply pessimistic or too much. Without a framework that honors the underlying pattern, they continue to experience their gift primarily as burden and friction. The paradox is that the same traits causing trouble are often the ones that, when disciplined and contextualized, bring the most clarity, healing, or innovation into a system. The overly sensitive child becomes the adult who notices what nobody else will name. This stubborn teenager becomes the adult who refuses to collude with harmful patterns. The disruptive student becomes the designer of better structures. Seeing this clearly allows you to revisit your past with different eyes. Instead of asking, "What was wrong with me back then?" you can ask, "What was trying to express that nobody around me knew how to work with?" That question can turn old pain into a map for where your true capacities have been hiding all along. The cost of suppressing natural gifts. Suppressing natural gifts always carries a cost, even when suppression seems necessary for survival or belonging. When a fundamental way of perceiving or operating is repeatedly pushed down, the energy that wants to move through it has to go somewhere else. Often it converts into anxiety, chronic fatigue, irritability, or a vague sense of inner deadness. Life may look stable from the outside, but internally it feels like running with the brakes half engaged. Suppression also distorts self-perception. Over time, you begin to believe the muted version of yourself is the real one. You describe yourself using words that reflect adaptation rather than essence. Reliable, easygoing, agreeable, productive. These traits may be partially true, but something essential is missing. The parts of you that were once vivid become ghost-like, showing up in dreams, fantasies, or sudden bursts of feeling that seem out of proportion to current events. Relationships pay a price as well. When your natural gifts are offline, others meet only a sliver of who you are. You may enter roles that are workable but not alive, attracting people who depend on your compliance rather than your clarity. Over time, resentment builds beneath the surface. You might feel unappreciated without fully realizing you participated in the arrangement by hiding your sharper, stranger, or more powerful capacities. Suppression also blocks long-term compounding. Gifts mature through use. Every year spent acting from misalignment is a year not spent deepening the structures that would make your contribution distinctive. This does not mean it is ever too late, but it does mean there is an opportunity cost. When you finally begin reclaiming your gifts, part of the grief is recognizing what could not be built while you were busy being someone else. The most subtle cost is spiritual or existential. Suppressing natural gifts creates a disconnection from the feeling that your life is truly yours. You may keep your promises, meet obligations, and do decent work, yet still sense you are skimming the surface of what you came here to do. That sense does not arise from ego. It arises from the quiet intelligence of the gift itself, asking to be brought back into play. The myth of equal potential. One of the most damaging modern myths is the idea that everyone has essentially equal potential in every direction, and that with enough effort anyone can become anything. While this sounds uplifting, it quietly denies the reality of difference. Human beings are not interchangeable. Nervous systems are not identical. Natural gifts create asymmetries in what is possible, where effort lands, and how far it can realistically go. Equal worth is not the same as equal wiring. You can value every person's inherent dignity while still acknowledging that not everyone can become a world-class musician, strategist, healer, or systems thinker, no matter how many hours they grind. Pretending otherwise places enormous pressure on people to fix limitations that are not actually failures, but structural facts. It also prevents them from fully honoring the directions in which they genuinely are exceptional. This myth also obscures responsibility in the opposite direction. Someone with a powerful natural gift may underinvest in it, believing they are no different from anyone else, and therefore not particularly obligated to cultivate it. When you assume your deepest strengths are common, you are less likely to treat them as something to steward, protect, and mature. Potential that could have become stabilizing for many people remains half-formed. The myth of equal potential also flattens community. When everyone is told to chase the same kinds of success, systems become crowded with people forcing themselves down narrow paths, while entire fields of possibility go underdeveloped. Natural diversity in gifts is what allows families, teams, and cultures to become robust. Some people are built to lead, some to heal, some to interpret, some to engineer, some to challenge, some to harmonize. Letting go of this myth does not mean accepting a small life. It means accepting a specific life. Instead of asking, "Why can't I be anything?" you begin asking, "Given the actual configuration I have, where can my effort create the most real, sustainable impact?" That question is humbling, but it is also freeing. It trades fantasy for traction. Why desire does not equal gift? Desire is often confused with giftedness, but the two are not the same. Desire points toward what you are drawn to experience, express, or receive. It can be shaped by inspiration, admiration, insecurity, marketing, or unresolved wounds. A natural gift, by contrast, describes how your system is actually built to function. It governs what you can do reliably, deeply, and sustainably over time, regardless of how glamorous it looks from the outside. You can want something intensely without being structurally suited for it. Many people fall in love with an image: the visionary entrepreneur, the celebrated artist, the spiritual teacher, the heroic healer. They may pursue that image for years, fueled by desire and willpower, only to find that their nervous system collapses under the demands of that role. The fantasy was compelling, but the underlying wiring does not support it. The reverse is also true. You can possess a strong natural gift in an area you never fantasized about. Perhaps you consistently calm people in chaos, or reorganize messy systems without effort, or translate abstract ideas into grounded next steps. You might not desire these roles because they do not match your ego ideals. Yet they are precisely where your structure operates with unusual efficiency and resilience. Desire is not useless. It is a signal worth listening to. It can reveal where you crave meaning, beauty, connection, or impact. However, desire must be tested against reality. The question is not only, "What do I want?" but also, "Where does my system consistently perform well with less friction than average?" When those two answers overlap, you have a powerful alignment. When they do not, choosing desire against design leads to burnout and bitterness. Mature development means allowing desire to start the conversation, but letting evidence, embodiment, and long-term sustainability have the final say. A life built on that balance honors both your hunger and your actual architecture. Natural gifts versus learned powers. Learned powers are impressive abilities developed through discipline, repetition, and exposure. They include public speaking, coding, surgery, negotiation, or any other complex skill that can be acquired over time. Natural gifts, by contrast, are the underlying engines that make learning in certain directions unusually fast, deep, or stable. You can have learned powers with no strong gift in that area, and you can have powerful gifts that never become external powers because they are never trained. The difference often shows up in effort-to-output ratio. When you build a learned power on top of a natural gift, progress accelerates. You integrate feedback quickly, innovate without trying, and maintain performance under pressure with less internal cost. When you build a learned power without a corresponding gift, progress is possible but heavy. You retain competence only through ongoing effort, and setbacks feel destabilizing rather than instructive. This distinction matters for sustainability. Many people make careers from learned powers that are not aligned with their deepest gifts because those powers pay the bills or earn respect. The system can work for a while, but over time the lack of structural support becomes apparent. Burnout, numbness, or quiet despair creep in, even when external success continues. The person may assume they just need more rest or motivation, when the real issue is misalignment at the foundation. On the other hand, trusting natural gifts without doing the work to build learned powers leads to another kind of imbalance. Raw giftedness without discipline can become arrogant, erratic, or unreliable. The person may rely on improvisation and avoid structure, limiting their impact and reducing trust from others. Gifts want to become powers, but only if you are willing to apprentice to your own design. Seeing clearly where you are operating from gift-backed power, pure learned power, or undeveloped gift allows you to make honest decisions about where to invest next. The goal is not to abandon learned powers, but to gradually anchor more of your life in the places where learning and effort are amplified by your deeper wiring. The ethics of gift awareness. Becoming aware of your natural gifts is not just a self-discovery exercise. It is an ethical turning point. Once you know where you have unusual clarity, influence, or capacity, your choices in those areas carry more weight. Ignorance is no longer a full defense. You cannot honestly claim you are just like everyone else when evidence shows that your perception, impact, or resilience in a specific domain is significantly higher than average. Gifts amplify both potential help and potential harm. A gift for communication can uplift or manipulate. A gift for emotional attunement can heal or control. A gift for strategy can guide wisely or justify exploitation. The stronger the gift, the more important it becomes to anchor it in humility, boundaries, and consent. Without that grounding, giftedness easily feeds ego, savior complexes, or quiet forms of domination. Ethical use of gifts also includes responsibility to yourself. Having a gift does not mean you are obligated to use it in every situation or for every person who wants access to it. Overextending your capacities out of guilt, messiah fantasies, or fear of disapproval leads to depletion and distortion. You are responsible for the health of the instrument through which the gift moves, not just for outcomes. Another ethical dimension is honesty about limits. Knowing you have a gift in one area does not give you authority in all areas. Confusing giftedness with global insight is how cults, bad leadership, and harmfully charismatic figures arise. A grounded relationship to your gifts includes a clear sense of where they stop and where you need the gifts of others. Ultimately, the ethics of gift awareness can be summarized as this. Your gifts are not proof that you are special, they are proof that you are equipped. What you are equipped for, and how you choose to use that equipment, is where your character, maturity, and willingness to serve something larger than your own narrative are revealed. Part 2. The body and brain of natural gifts. 11. Genetics and predisposition. Genetic predisposition establishes much of the foundational architecture from which natural gifts emerge. This does not mean a person's gifts are predetermined or rigid, but it does mean that biological wiring influences how easily certain strengths appear and how deeply they can be developed. Neural pathways, neurotransmitter balances, sensory thresholds, and metabolic rhythms all contribute to the types of information a person notices and the pace at which they process it. These internal differences create natural asymmetries that shape the landscape of giftedness long before conscious identity forms. Genes provide the outline, but expression depends heavily on environment and lived experience. A child with a genetic tilt toward perceptual sensitivity may develop remarkable emotional intelligence if supported, or may develop anxiety if constantly overwhelmed. A child with naturally elevated cognitive bandwidth may become a strategist when encouraged to explore complexity, or may become detached if pressured into simple, repetitive tasks. Thus, genetics set capacity, while context shapes direction. Family patterns often reveal how predispositions manifest across generations. A lineage may share intuitive, analytical, or creative strengths even when expressed in different domains. These similarities point not to inherited careers, but to inherited processing styles that can be channeled into a wide range of fields. Recognizing these patterns helps individuals understand that natural gifts often reflect deep-rooted neurological tendencies rather than random abilities. Genetic predisposition also influences energetic sustainability. Some people naturally maintain focus for long periods, while others excel in short, intense bursts. Some process emotional information rapidly, while others process sensory data with exceptional clarity. These tendencies determine where effort feels aligned versus draining, which becomes crucial when selecting meaningful pursuits. Understanding genetics empowers individuals to work with their biology rather than against it. Seeing predisposition clearly reduces shame around limitations and increases respect for strengths that may have previously gone unnoticed. This clarity becomes the starting point for cultivating natural gifts with realism instead of fantasy. 12. Brain lateralization and cognitive style. Brain lateralization influences the cognitive style through which natural gifts operate. While the outdated left brain versus right brain dichotomy oversimplifies this reality, individuals genuinely differ in how they organize and interpret information. Some minds break complexity into sequential components, processing events in linear order. Others integrate information holistically, sensing the whole system before identifying individual parts. These styles shape how gifts emerge, how insights form, and how decisions are made. Sequential processors thrive on structure and predictable logic. Their natural gifts often involve analysis, planning, organization, or refining processes. They excel in environments where clarity, consistency, and precision matter. When nurtured, these individuals become stabilizing forces who bring order to chaos. When misunderstood, their preference for structure can be misinterpreted as inflexibility rather than an authentic cognitive strength. Holistic processors operate differently. They absorb complexity in one sweep, noticing connections, symbolism, and relational dynamics without needing to consciously trace each step. Their natural gifts often show up in synthesis, creativity, diplomacy, problem framing, or strategic insight. They see patterns others miss, but early environments may misjudge this as vagueness or distractibility. Their gifts mature best in contexts that value nonlinear thinking. Cognitive style also influences emotional integration. Some individuals process emotion analytically, treating it as data to interpret. Others experience emotion as a guiding intelligence that shapes perception and decision-making. Both patterns can support strong natural gifts, but each requires different forms of regulation and expression to remain balanced. When individuals understand their cognitive style, they stop forcing themselves into incompatible paths. They also stop comparing themselves to people whose wiring supports entirely different strengths. Embracing one style enhances self-trust and reduces internal friction, making the expression of natural gifts more coherent, reliable, and sustainable over time. 13. Sensory sensitivity and neural bandwidth. Sensory sensitivity significantly impacts the emergence of natural gifts. Some individuals experience heightened sensory input, absorbing subtle cues in sound, light, texture, movement, or emotional tone. Others maintain narrower sensory channels that allow them to tune out background noise and concentrate deeply. These differences influence not only perception but also energy usage, emotional regulation, and cognitive specialization. High sensitivity creates broad neural bandwidth. The person collects more information per moment, often without realizing how much they are taking in. This increased data flow fuels capacities such as empathy, creativity, intuition, environmental awareness, or rapid learning. It also increases vulnerability to overstimulation, especially in chaotic or emotionally intense environments. Without proper regulation, the gift becomes draining rather than empowering. Low sensitivity creates depth-focused bandwidth. These individuals filter out non-essential stimuli, enabling them to excel at precision tasks, long-term focus, or sustained analytical work. They can remain centered amid noise that overwhelms others. However, if untrained, they may overlook subtle relational or contextual cues that could enhance their effectiveness. Both sensory profiles support meaningful natural gifts. Broad bandwidth favors integration and adaptability, while concentrated bandwidth favors mastery and stability. Problems arise only when individuals assume there is a correct way to perceive. Comparing one sensory style to another wastes energy and leads to misjudging one's own strengths. Understanding sensory sensitivity helps individuals choose environments that support their regulation and development. When sensitivity is treated not as a flaw but as structural intelligence, people learn to harness their perceptual advantages responsibly. Sensory awareness becomes the ground on which their natural gifts take shape and mature. 14. Neurodivergence and gift expression. Neurodivergence frequently intersects with natural gifts because atypical wiring often produces unusual strengths. Conditions such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or high sensitivity reorganize patterns of attention, perception, and cognition. These differences create irregular distributions of ability, exceptional strengths in some areas, significant challenges in others. When properly understood and supported, neurodivergent profiles become fertile ground for natural gifts to flourish. Neurodivergent individuals often process information in ways that defy conventional expectations. They may hyperfocus intensely on meaningful tasks while struggling to engage with mundane ones. They may intuitively understand systems, yet find social nuance confusing, or vice versa. These asymmetries reflect specialization, not deficiency. Natural gifts frequently emerge from the very traits others might initially label as disruptive or impractical. Unfortunately, most environments pathologize divergence rather than recognizing its potential. A child who questions authority may be labeled oppositional, despite having analytical gifts. A person overwhelmed by sensory detail may develop creative or perceptual strengths others cannot access. Without frameworks that interpret their abilities accurately, neurodivergent individuals internalize the belief that something is fundamentally wrong with them. When environments shift from control to understanding, neurodivergent gifts expand rapidly. Safe, flexible contexts allow unusual processing styles to stabilize and refine. What once appeared as dysfunction becomes a specialized form of intelligence, often leading to breakthroughs in fields like engineering, design, research, healing, or innovation. The key is recognizing that neurodivergence is not a deviation from the norm, but a variation of it. When individuals stop trying to mimic neurotypical functioning and instead honor their actual design, their natural gifts emerge with clarity, power, and authenticity. 15. Pattern recognition as a core marker. Pattern recognition is one of the clearest markers of natural gifts because it reveals how efficiently a person's mind organizes complexity. This ability appears across many domains: mathematics, strategy, emotional understanding, storytelling, symbolic interpretation, or technology. Individuals with strong pattern recognition do not simply notice details. They perceive structure, sequence, and hidden order within chaos. Their mind compresses information into clarity, often faster than they can explain the process. This skill often emerges early in life. Children with strong pattern recognition may finish thoughts before explanations are given, detect inconsistencies faster than adults expect, or jump to accurate conclusions without knowing how they arrived there. These insights are not guesses. They reflect a perceptual system integrating data at high speed. Pattern recognition produces predictive power. Individuals with this gift can anticipate outcomes, sense shifts in relationships or systems, and identify leverage points long before others notice anything unusual. This can make them seem insightful, intuitive, or even uncanny. In truth, they are simply tracking variables that others filter out. Challenges arise when they cannot articulate their reasoning. People may doubt them, misinterpret their silence, or misunderstand their rapid processing as arrogance. Over time, the individual may second-guess their perceptions or hide their insights to avoid conflict. When honored and trained, pattern recognition becomes one of the most practical and impactful natural gifts. It provides clarity under uncertainty, reduces error, and enhances decision-making. The gift grows exponentially when paired with communication skills, allowing individuals to translate their rapid internal comprehension into guidance others can trust. 16. Emotional processing styles. Emotional processing styles shape how individuals engage with their internal experience and how natural gifts rooted in emotional intelligence develop. Some people process emotions deeply and slowly, moving through layers of meaning before reaching clarity. Others process emotions rapidly, experiencing quick waves of understanding followed by swift resolution. These differences influence how people interpret relationships, navigate conflict, and sense the emotional dynamics of systems. Deep processors often have gifts in empathy, healing, counseling, or reflective insight. Their emotional landscape is rich and multifaceted, enabling them to understand subtle motivations and hidden tensions. However, this depth can become overwhelming without structure, leading to rumination or emotional fatigue. When supported properly, it becomes a profound asset for navigating human complexity. Fast processors move through emotion with agility. They understand their feelings quickly and shift into action or reorientation with minimal delay. Their natural gifts may emerge in leadership, crisis response, communication, or strategic thinking. Their speed allows them to remain effective under pressure, but it can also lead to misjudging situations that require more emotional patience. Both processing styles are valuable. Issues arise only when one is forced to resemble the other. Deep processors may feel too slow, while fast processors may feel too detached. The truth is that each style reflects a structural orientation that supports different strengths. Matching life roles to processing style decreases emotional friction and increases reliability. Understanding emotional processing also enhances relational intelligence. People stop interpreting differences as flaws and begin recognizing them as complementary patterns. This reduces conflict and increases collaborative flow, allowing natural gifts to function without unnecessary emotional strain. 17. Memory types and learning orientation. Memory influences how natural gifts evolve because different memory systems support different types of intelligence. Some individuals excel in episodic memory, recalling experiences vividly and drawing insight from lived events. Others rely more on semantic memory, absorbing concepts, theories, and frameworks with ease. Still, others excel in procedural memory, mastering skills through repetition and embodied learning. These variations shape how people acquire competence and deepen mastery. Episodic learners often thrive in fields involving narrative, psychology, relational insight, or historical understanding. Their memory captures context, mood, and emotional nuance, allowing them to make connections others overlook. However, they may struggle with abstract or decontextualized information unless they anchor it to experience. Semantic learners absorb ideas quickly. They excel in academic environments, abstract reasoning, and conceptual analysis. Their natural gifts may reveal themselves in research, philosophy, mathematics, or systems design. Yet they may feel disconnected when dealing with highly personal or emotional situations unless they intentionally integrate experiential understanding. Procedural learners internalize knowledge through action. They learn by doing rather than by listening or conceptualizing. Their natural gifts often emerge in craftsmanship, athletics, surgery, performance, or any field requiring precision and embodied intelligence. They may struggle with verbal explanation but demonstrate remarkable mastery through repetition. Each memory orientation provides unique pathways of excellence. Problems arise only when individuals judge themselves by incompatible standards. A procedural learner who tries to learn purely through lectures may feel defective. A semantic learner forced into rote memorization may feel disengaged. When learning environments match memory type, natural gifts mature rapidly and sustainably. 18. Intuition as fast pattern compression. Intuition is often misunderstood as a mystical force, yet it is more accurately described as fast, subconscious pattern compression. The mind integrates vast amounts of information beneath conscious awareness, generating a sense of knowing long before reasoning elaborates the steps. For individuals wired this way, intuition becomes one of their most reliable natural gifts, offering rapid insight in complex or ambiguous situations. Intuitive processors detect microsignals that others overlook: tone shifts, subtle tensions, behavioral inconsistencies, or environmental cues. Their mind synthesizes these elements into a cohesive understanding almost instantly. Because the process is nonverbal and nonlinear, explaining it can feel unnatural, leading others to dismiss their insights as guesses. In truth, intuition reflects highly efficient cognition. Intuition becomes problematic only when it is untested or ungrounded. Without feedback loops, intuitive individuals may confuse emotional projection with genuine insight. Overconfidence can distort perception, while fear can suppress clarity. The gift requires calibration through experience, reflection, and humility. When properly trained, intuition becomes a strategic advantage. It supports decision-making under uncertainty, enhances interpersonal awareness, and reveals patterns before they become visible through analysis. Many innovators, healers, strategists, and creators rely on intuition as their first mode of perception, using logic afterward to refine and communicate their insights. Recognizing intuition as a form of intelligence allows individuals to trust their perception without romanticizing it. They learn to integrate intuition with evidence, creating a balanced, reliable approach to understanding themselves and the world. 19. Nervous system thresholds and overwhelm. The nervous system's threshold for stimulation plays a crucial role in how natural gifts develop and how consistently they can be expressed. Some individuals have high thresholds, allowing them to tolerate sensory intensity, emotional pressure, and rapid-paced environments without losing clarity. Others have lower thresholds, making them highly sensitive to noise, conflict, and multitasking. Neither profile is superior. Each shapes different forms of giftedness and different vulnerabilities. High-threshold individuals often excel in crisis management, leadership, or roles requiring sustained performance under stress. Their natural gifts include staying calm when others panic, making decisions quickly, and absorbing large amounts of input without becoming overwhelmed. However, their tolerance can lead them to ignore subtle cues or push themselves too far physically or emotionally. Low-threshold individuals perceive nuance at a depth others rarely reach. They notice micro-shifts in mood, meaning, or environment that escape general awareness. Their natural gifts frequently emerge in healing arts, creative fields, or strategic insight roles. Yet without proper management, overstimulation can lead to shutdown, withdrawal, or chronic exhaustion. These thresholds are not weaknesses or strengths in isolation. They are structural parameters that determine how energy is processed. The key is matching environments, pacing, and expectations to the nervous system's natural rhythm. High-threshold individuals benefit from intensity and challenge, but need grounding practices to stay attuned. Low-threshold individuals benefit from supportive, predictable environments, but need stimulation in carefully measured doses to grow. When individuals understand their threshold, they stop forcing themselves into mismatched contexts. This reduces chronic overwhelm and increases the stability with which their natural gifts can be expressed, refined, and sustained. 20. Trauma adaptation versus true natural gifts. Trauma adaptations can closely mimic natural gifts, making it difficult to distinguish genuine wiring from survival-based abilities. Hypervigilance may resemble intuition. People-pleasing may look like empathy. Overpreparedness may look like strategic thinking. These adaptive behaviors emerge not from ease, but from necessity, functioning to protect the individual in unsafe or unpredictable environments. While impressive, they do not reflect the same energetic cost, sustainability, or clarity as authentic gifts. The primary difference lies in how each pattern feels internally. Trauma adaptations create tension, urgency, and exhaustion. They rely on scanning for danger, anticipating harm, or maintaining control. When the stressor disappears, the behavior often persists compulsively. In contrast, natural gifts generate clarity and efficiency. They remain stable without fear, and they strengthen through rest rather than deteriorate. Another distinction lies in long-term viability. Trauma adaptations collapse under prolonged pressure or when the person attempts to generalize them into new domains. Natural gifts remain consistent across varied contexts, revealing themselves during both stability and crisis. They do not require hypervigilance, emotional suppression, or self-sacrifice to function. Healing plays an essential role in this differentiation. As individuals process trauma and regain regulation, adaptive strengths often soften or dissolve. If a capacity remains after healing, still effortless, still reliable, still energizing, it is likely a natural gift. If it weakens significantly, it was serving as a protective mechanism rather than a core capability. Recognizing the difference prevents people from building identities around coping strategies. It allows them to free themselves from burdens masquerading as strengths and make room for their genuine architecture to emerge. When this clarity arrives, the path forward becomes more authentic, sustainable, and aligned with who they truly are rather than who they had to become. Part 3. Psychological Signatures. 21. Identity formation and the masking of gifts. Identity formation begins long before a person consciously shapes who they believe they are. In early life, children absorb expectations, norms, and emotional boundaries from family systems and cultural environments. This shaping process often obscures natural gifts because a child prioritizes acceptance over authenticity. When a gift conflicts with the emotional needs or beliefs of caregivers, the developing identity learns to mute or redirect it. Over years, these compensations crystallize, becoming mistaken for inherent personality traits rather than survival-driven adaptations. Masking occurs when individuals unconsciously present a socially approved version of themselves to avoid conflict or misunderstanding. A child with a deep perceptual gift may learn to pretend not to notice tensions that adults deny. A child with strong intuition may learn to silence insights that unsettle authority. Over time, masking becomes automatic. Adults then wonder why they feel disconnected or foggy, unaware that they are suppressing the very patterns that define their natural gifts. Identity built around masking is inherently fragile. It relies on external stability, predictable roles, and environments that demand compliance. When life changes or internal contradictions become too strong, the mask cracks. People may feel lost, anxious, or disoriented, mistaking the collapse of the mask for the collapse of the self. In reality, it is the emergence of their deeper wiring pressing against old boundaries. Revealing natural gifts requires peeling back layers of borrowed identity. This process is not about abandoning everything learned, but discerning which patterns reflect true architecture and which reflect conditioning. When individuals rediscover capacities they long buried, they often experience a sense of recognition rather than surprise. The gift feels like something they always knew but could not articulate. This rediscovery marks the beginning of a more coherent, grounded identity. 22. Childhood signals and early inclinations. Early childhood often contains clear signals of natural gifts. Yet these signals are frequently dismissed as quirks, phases, or behavioral issues. Children show their wiring through play patterns, questions they repeat, problems they gravitate toward, and the kinds of information they absorb effortlessly. A child fascinated by patterns may line objects with precision, while a child with emotional gifts may comfort others instinctively. These behaviors are not random. They reflect early expressions of deep architecture. However, adults tend to interpret childhood behavior through the lens of practicality or convenience. A child who spends hours exploring imaginative worlds may be labeled distracted, even though this imaginative depth is often the root of creative giftedness. A child who resists unnecessary rules may be seen as rebellious, despite possessing an emerging strategic mind. Misreading the signal does not erase the gift, but it can distort development by pushing the child toward roles that constrain rather than cultivate their design. Early inclinations also show up in curiosity. Some children ask structural questions, seeking to understand how systems work. Others ask relational questions, sensitive to emotions, motives, or fairness. Others explore environments physically, experimenting through action rather than words. These tendencies reveal learning orientation and cognitive style long before formal education begins. Parents and teachers who recognize these patterns can support natural development rather than forcing fit. Unfortunately, many children learn to hide their inclinations to avoid embarrassment, punishment, or unwanted attention. They begin shaping interests around what is praised rather than what feels alive. As a result, their earliest signals become buried beneath layers of performance and adaptation. Rediscovering natural gifts later in life often involves re-examining childhood memories for clues. Recognizing childhood signals does not recreate the past, but it clarifies the future. When adults reconnect with early inclinations, they gain insight into which capacities were authentic and which were imposed. This awareness strengthens self-trust and reopens pathways closed by conditioning. 23. Effort-to-output ratio and gift alignment. One of the most reliable indicators of natural gifts is the effort-to-output ratio. When someone works in alignment with their wiring, modest effort produces disproportionate clarity, quality, or efficiency. Tasks that drain others feel naturally energizing. Problem-solving becomes fluid rather than forced. Even under stress, performance remains stable. These outcomes are not symptoms of arrogance or luck. They reflect structural fit. Misalignment shows a different pattern. People expend massive effort, yet feel behind. They struggle to sustain focus or motivation. Skills are learned, but do not compound. The nervous system reacts with tension, frustration, or exhaustion. Individuals may interpret this as lack of discipline, when in reality the task simply does not match their cognitive or emotional architecture. No amount of motivational rhetoric fixes structural mismatch. Effort to output ratio becomes clearer when observed across time. In aligned domains, improvement follows a smooth upward trajectory even with moderate practice. In misaligned domains, progress plateaus rapidly. This distinction helps individuals choose wisely where to invest energy. Too often, people reinforce misalignment because they were praised for competence rather than guided toward giftedness. Recognizing effort to output patterns requires honesty. People often cling to roles that reflect external validation, refusing to acknowledge the internal cost. Others dismiss areas of ease because they seem too simple to be meaningful. Yet ease is one of the surest signals of a natural gift. It shows where the mind's design synchronizes with the task's demands, allowing efficiency without strain. Using effort to output ratio as a compass does not justify avoiding challenge. It reveals where challenge produces growth instead of decline. When individuals choose their paths based on this metric, they conserve energy, accelerate development, and build lives that feel both meaningful and sustainable. 24. Emotional triggers as data. Emotional triggers often hold valuable information about natural gifts, though they are usually interpreted as weaknesses. A trigger is not merely a reaction to pain. It is a signal that something meaningful, misaligned, or unresolved is being touched. Individuals often get triggered in areas where their gifts were suppressed, misunderstood, or exploited. Therefore, triggers become a map pointing toward capacities that were once alive but forced underground. For example, someone with a leadership gift may feel disproportionate irritation when they witness incompetence or avoidable confusion. Someone with a perceptual gift may feel unsettled when others ignore obvious patterns. Someone with an empathy gift may feel overwhelmed by dismissiveness or emotional dishonesty. These reactions indicate areas where sensitivity and responsibility were once natural but became complicated by experience. Emotional triggers also highlight boundaries. A person triggered by chaos may possess a natural orientation toward structure or clarity. A person triggered by inequality may have a gift for justice or mediation. These signals should not be romanticized, but respected. They reveal where the nervous system detects violations of internal truth. Working with triggers requires patience. Instead of suppressing them or exploding through them, individuals can analyze their origin. Asking what value is being violated or what gift feels threatened reveals underlying architecture. Many times, the trigger is not about the event itself, but about years of self-betrayal or forced conformity around that gift. Triggers lose their charge when the gift is reclaimed. Emotional energy stops leaking into reactivity and becomes available for aligned action. Rather than treating triggers as flaws, individuals learn to read them as diagnostic tools that reveal where natural intelligence is asking to be restored. 25. Failure patterns that reveal capacity. Patterns of failure can reveal as much about natural gifts as patterns of success. People often assume repeated failure indicates lack of talent, but failure frequently appears in areas where the gift is present but unstructured, unsupported, or misapplied. Individuals may sense potential intuitively, yet struggle to execute because conditions do not match their wiring. When analyzed correctly, these patterns highlight where latent capacity exists beneath chaotic expression. Early failure is common in areas where gifts are strong but raw. A perceptive child may be disciplined for speaking uncomfortable truths. A creative child may be penalized for breaking rules they did not find meaningful. A strategic thinker may provoke conflict because they see flaws in systems that others accept. These failures reflect environmental mismatch rather than lack of ability. Failure also reveals misalignment between gift and role. A person may excel in visionary thinking but fail in administrative tasks. Another may thrive in complexity but falter in routine. Recognizing this distinction prevents misdiagnosis. The goal is not to eliminate failure, but to reinterpret it through the lens of design. Some failures are actually boundaries. People repeatedly fail at tasks that violate their natural rhythm, sensory capacity, or cognitive style. They succeed easily in adjacent tasks that align more closely with their architecture. Observing this pattern helps individuals refine their path rather than abandoning it entirely. When individuals stop moralizing failure and start analyzing it, clarity emerges. Failure becomes information about where refinement is needed, where conditions must change, or where the gift needs training. Instead of discouragement, failure becomes a compass, quietly pointing toward the shape of the natural gift beneath it. 26. Attention patterns and what you naturally track. Attention patterns reveal the terrain of natural gifts more reliably than intention or desire. People notice certain types of information without trying, and this spontaneous attention reflects the architecture of their perception. Some individuals naturally track emotional states, sensing shifts in mood or interpersonal tension instantly. Others track structural inconsistencies, logical flaws, or emerging patterns. Still others track sensory detail, movement, or symbolic meaning. What a person notices first often reveals how their gifts operate beneath conscious thought. These attention patterns show up early. A child may fixate on symmetry, fairness, strategic outcomes, or emotional safety. Adults often recall being told they were too sensitive, too analytical, or too imaginative, not realizing these traits were glimpses of their natural gifts. Attention is not neutral. It is shaped by the nervous system's priorities. Natural tracking tendencies indicate where cognitive and emotional resources are optimized. Attention also reveals limitations. Just as people naturally track certain domains, they naturally ignore others. This is not failure, but specialization. A gifted strategist may overlook emotional nuance, while a gifted empath may miss structural flaws. Recognizing what your attention does not track prevents unrealistic expectations and encourages complementary collaboration. Environments influence attention patterns as well. Stress may narrow focus to threat cues, masking underlying strengths. Safe environments broaden attention, allowing gifts to emerge. Observing how your attention shifts across conditions clarifies which patterns reflect innate wiring and which reflect adaptation. When individuals understand their attention signatures, they stop forcing themselves to notice what others think is important and start valuing what their mind is already designed to see. This shift transforms attention from a source of self-judgment into a roadmap for developing natural gifts with precision. 27. The role you default into in relationships. The roles people consistently occupy in relationships offer strong clues about natural gifts. These roles form not from obligation, but from instinct. A person may habitually mediate conflict, organize chaos, interpret emotions, offer perspective, or take initiative without being asked. These recurring relational patterns reveal where the nervous system feels competent and responsible, even before conscious awareness forms. Default roles appear across environments: family, friendships, school, and work. If someone always becomes the problem solver, it suggests cognitive strengths in synthesis or strategy. If they consistently provide emotional grounding, it suggests a gift for regulation or attunement. If they naturally assume leadership, it suggests confidence in navigation and decision-making. These patterns persist even when the person attempts to avoid them, reflecting deep architecture rather than preference. However, default roles can become distorted when tied to trauma or conditioning. A child who grows up in emotional unpredictability may adopt a caretaker role out of necessity, not giftedness. Distinguishing voluntary competence from survival-driven responsibility is crucial. The key metric is how the role feels in regulated states. If the role feels heavy, obligatory, or exhausting, it likely arose from adaptation. If it feels natural, energizing, and clear, it is more likely rooted in a natural gift. Default relational roles also reveal boundaries. People often get pulled into roles they excel at, but do not want to perform constantly. Learning to offer gifts selectively rather than reflexively is part of maturation. Clear boundaries transform relational roles from burdens into contributions. Understanding default roles helps individuals align their social environments with their true nature. When surrounded by people who respect these roles rather than exploit them, gifts deepen rather than drain. 28. Feedback loops. What people consistently ask from you. The requests people repeatedly make reveal how others perceive your strengths long before you recognize them yourself. People unconsciously sense competence and gravitate toward it. If you are frequently asked for emotional support, strategic clarity, troubleshooting, teaching, or mediation, these requests reflect how your natural gifts are already functioning in the social ecosystem. Feedback loops provide external confirmation of internal architecture. These patterns emerge early. Classmates may ask for help understanding instructions. Teachers may rely on you to calm tense situations. Friends may seek your advice during conflict. Family members may depend on your ability to interpret emotional undercurrents. These recurring requests are not random. They reflect trust in your natural way of perceiving and responding. However, repeated requests can also reveal exploitation. If people rely on your capacities without offering reciprocity, the gift becomes a resource others take for granted. Over time, this can lead to depletion, resentment, or loss of clarity. Just because others ask does not mean you must give. Natural gifts thrive when used intentionally, not compulsively. Feedback loops also highlight blind spots. You may undervalue strengths that others rely on heavily because they feel too easy to count as gifts. People may affirm gifts you have never consciously claimed. These external reflections help you see what your internal experience makes invisible. Integrating feedback requires discernment. Not every request indicates a gift worth cultivating. Some requests reflect roles you outgrew or boundaries you need to strengthen. Yet when multiple people consistently seek the same form of support or insight, patterns emerge that reveal the contours of your natural gifts. 29. Resistance as misalignment versus fear. Resistance arises in two forms: misalignment and fear. Distinguishing between them is essential for developing natural gifts. Misalignment occurs when a task or path contradicts your cognitive or emotional architecture. Fear arises when the path is aligned but challenges your sense of safety, identity, or self-worth. Misinterpreting one for the other leads to stagnation, self-sabotage, or unnecessary struggle. Misalignment feels heavy, dull, or energetically draining. Even with discipline, progress is minimal. Your nervous system resists not because the task is difficult, but because it violates your natural pattern. Fear-based resistance feels different. It creates tension, anticipatory anxiety, or avoidance, yet part of you senses the path is right. Once action begins, energy increases rather than decreases. Fear shrinks with movement. Misalignment intensifies. Many people treat all resistance as something to push through, believing discipline can overcome any barrier. This leads to burnout when the resistance stems from genuine misalignment. Conversely, some treat all resistance as a sign to quit, abandoning aligned paths whenever fear arises. This prevents natural gifts from maturing into mastery. Developing clarity around resistance requires introspection and pattern observation. How do you feel after engaging the task? Do you gain energy or lose it? Do you feel more yourself or less yourself? Do you sense avoidance shrinking or solidifying? Answers to these questions reveal whether resistance reflects wisdom or insecurity. When individuals honor misalignment, they stop wasting energy. When they confront fear, they stop hiding from growth. This distinction ensures natural gifts are developed through courage, not coercion. 30. Long-term curiosity as a gift compass. Long-term curiosity acts as a compass pointing toward natural gifts. While interests shift and hobbies come and go, certain themes persist across years or decades. These persistent curiosities appear in reading patterns, conversations, daydreams, problem-solving approaches, or the types of questions that feel naturally compelling. They reveal where the mind finds nourishment, even without reward. Persistent curiosity is not the same as excitement or passion. Passion fluctuates with mood and circumstance. Curiosity remains steady, returning quietly even during difficult or busy periods. A person may suppress it, ignore it, or postpone it, yet it resurfaces each time life creates space. This recurrence signals alignment with deep cognitive or emotional architecture. Curiosity also reveals how your mind organizes experience. Someone drawn repeatedly to psychology likely has a gift for perception or interpretation. Someone consistently exploring strategy or systems likely has a gift for structure. Someone fascinated by healing practices likely has gifts oriented toward emotional or somatic attunement. These thematic patterns are more trustworthy than momentary inspiration. Barriers often obscure long-term curiosity. Social pressure may redirect attention toward more practical pursuits. Shame or doubt may cause individuals to abandon areas where they feel behind. Trauma may bury curiosity beneath survival concerns. Rediscovering it requires intentional reflection and a willingness to honor quiet preferences over loud obligations. When long-term curiosity and effort-to-output ratio overlap, natural gifts become unmistakably clear. Curiosity provides direction, ease provides validation. Together, they outline a path that feels both meaningful and structurally sustainable. Part 4. Environment, Culture, and Conditioning. 31. Family roles that shape or distort gifts. Family systems act as the first environment where natural gifts are either supported, ignored, or distorted. Children adapt their behavior to maintain harmony, safety, or belonging. A naturally perceptive child may become the emotional mediator if the household is volatile. A naturally analytical child may become the decision-maker when adults are inconsistent or overwhelmed. These roles often reflect gifted architecture, yet they develop under pressure rather than authentic curiosity, which shifts how the gift is internalized over time. When family roles align with a child's natural wiring, the gift grows with stability. A child inclined toward nurturing may flourish when caregivers encourage empathy without forcing responsibility. A child inclined toward structure may excel when allowed to organize, plan, or experiment. However, when roles contradict natural wiring, children override their architecture. A sensitive child forced into toughness may suppress perceptual gifts. A strategic child forced into emotional caretaking may develop anxiety around their real strengths. Family expectations also shape how individuals perceive value. Some families reward achievement, pushing gifted individuals into overperformance. Others dismiss insight or creativity, causing gifted children to hide their strengths to avoid judgment. These dynamics often linger into adulthood, influencing career paths, relationships, and self-trust. Family roles become problematic when they calcify. People may continue performing a childhood role long after leaving the environment that required it. A former caretaker may struggle to say no. A former problem solver may feel responsible for others' choices. These habits obscure natural gifts by blending them with survival-based behaviors, making it difficult to tell which capacities are authentic and which were compensations. Understanding family roles allows individuals to disentangle true gifts from inherited patterns. When they release roles created from necessity rather than nature, their authentic architecture begins to surface with renewed clarity and freedom. 32. Schooling and the standardization trap. Schooling systems are designed for uniform measurement, not for nurturing natural gifts. Standardization prioritizes predictability, conformity, and quantifiable outcomes. Children who think quickly, slowly, abstractly, symbolically, or non-linearly are forced into the same structures. As a result, many internalize the belief that their natural rhythm is incorrect. They learn to value external approval over internal cognition, often abandoning the strengths that do not fit the template. The standardization trap appears early. Students who excel in rote learning receive praise, even if their deeper gifts lie elsewhere. Students who question assumptions may be labeled disruptive, though this questioning reflects strategic or analytical potential. Creative thinkers may struggle with narrow evaluation systems despite possessing sophisticated perceptual abilities. These disparities create a false hierarchy of intelligence, distorting how students interpret their strengths and weaknesses. Schools also reward behavioral conformity, shaping social masks that persist into adulthood. Children learn to sit still even if their nervous system thrives on movement. They learn to remain quiet even if their strength lies in inquiry. They learn to follow procedure even when their mind naturally innovates. Over time, this disconnect creates internal confusion and dampens intrinsic motivation. Yet, schooling also reveals important signals. Subjects that feel effortless or disproportionately interesting often point toward natural gifts, even when grades do not reflect mastery. Conversely, subjects that drain energy despite effort often highlight misalignment. These reactions provide more accurate insight into wiring than academic performance alone. Recognizing the limitations of standardized education frees individuals from outdated evaluations of their worth. When adults reinterpret their school experiences through the lens of natural gifts, they often rediscover capacities they dismissed or misunderstood. This reframing allows them to reclaim intellectual autonomy and pursue paths better suited to their natural design. 33. Work culture and misplacement burnout. Modern work culture frequently misplaces individuals, assigning roles based on availability, credentials, or economic needs rather than natural gifts. Misplacement creates chronic friction between a person's wiring and their responsibilities. Even when they succeed, the energetic cost is high. Over time, this sustained misalignment leads to burnout, exhaustion not caused by effort alone, but by operating against one's core architecture. Burnout often begins subtly. Tasks feel heavier than they should. Efficiency decreases despite experience. Creativity shrinks, and emotional resilience declines. People assume the problem is lack of discipline, unaware that they are fighting their design. Misaligned work asks the nervous system to perform in ways it was not built to sustain, draining cognitive bandwidth and emotional stability. Work culture also reinforces performance-based identity. Individuals may remain in misaligned roles because they receive praise, promotions, or financial reward. Yet external success cannot compensate for internal depletion. Many high achievers experience burnout precisely because their external path contradicts their internal blueprint. They climb ladders leaning against the wrong walls. Misplacement burnout reveals itself during moments of quiet. When pressure lifts, individuals feel numb rather than relieved. They lose curiosity, clarity, and the natural vitality that accompanies aligned effort. These signs indicate not personal failure, but systemic mismatch. The solution is not to grind harder, but to realign responsibilities with authentic strengths. When individuals transition into roles aligned with their natural gifts, energy returns. Tasks feel lighter, creativity resurfaces, and performance stabilizes. They accomplish more with less effort because they are no longer forcing themselves into incompatible modes of functioning. Recognizing misplacement burnout empowers people to redesign their work lives around who they actually are, not who they were pressured to become. 34. Social approval as a gift suppressor. Social approval exerts powerful influence on the expression of natural gifts. Humans are wired for belonging, and fear of rejection often overrides intuitive knowing. Many people hide their strongest abilities because these gifts create discomfort, envy, or misunderstanding in others. When gifted individuals sense disapproval, they reshape themselves to fit collective norms, suppressing the very capacities that could guide their growth. Approval becomes a suppressor when people equate acceptance with safety. A naturally inquisitive person may silence their questions to avoid appearing confrontational. A highly creative individual may scale back originality to appear practical. A perceptive person may downplay insight to avoid unsettling others. Over time, individuals internalize the belief that their gifts are liabilities rather than strengths. Social groups often reward predictability over authenticity. Friends, coworkers, or partners may prefer the masked version of a gifted individual because it maintains emotional equilibrium. When a person begins reclaiming their natural gifts, social dynamics frequently shift. Those who relied on their muted presence may resist the change, misinterpreting growth as selfishness or instability. People also suppress gifts to avoid standing out. Many gifted individuals have painful memories of childhood moments when their abilities drew unwanted attention or criticism. These early experiences create associations between gifted expression and social risk, conditioning the person to minimize their strengths. As adults, they continue hiding their architecture even in supportive environments. Breaking this pattern requires recognizing that social approval is often based on compliance, not truth. Genuine belonging emerges when individuals express who they are without distortion. When people prioritize authenticity over approval, they attract relationships aligned with their real identity rather than their mask. This shift creates the social ecosystem necessary for natural gifts to flourish without suppression. 35. Shame, self-censorship, and hidden strength. Shame is one of the most effective silencers of natural gifts. It operates by convincing individuals that their deepest inclinations are inappropriate, excessive, inconvenient, or embarrassing. Shame forms early, often through subtle signals rather than explicit criticism. A child may share an insight and receive dismissal. They may display emotional depth and be told they are too sensitive. They may exhibit intensity and be told they are too much. These moments plant seeds of self-censorship. Self-censorship becomes habitual. Individuals stop expressing ideas that feel risky. They downplay strengths to avoid judgment. They question their intuition, creativity, or intelligence because shame taught them these qualities disrupt belonging. Over time, they forget which parts of themselves were genuine and which parts were edited for approval. This forgetting obscures natural gifts, burying them beneath layers of self-protection. Shame thrives in ambiguity. When individuals cannot distinguish between their authentic expression and others' reactions, they assume the problem is within themselves. This internalization narrows their identity and limits their willingness to explore or experiment. Many gifted adults carry deep uncertainty about their abilities because shame distorted their early attempts at expression. Hidden strength often exists precisely where shame is strongest. People who feel ashamed of sensitivity often possess profound perceptual gifts. Those ashamed of intensity often carry strategic or visionary strength. Those ashamed of unconventional thinking often possess creative or analytical brilliance. Shame attaches to that which is powerful because that which is powerful is also disruptive. Healing shame involves reclaiming the right to exist as one is. When individuals challenge internalized judgments and reinterpret early experiences through the lens of natural gifts, they release self-censorship. Strength that was once hidden becomes accessible again, allowing the person to express their architecture with clarity instead of hesitation. 36. Pressure, deadlines, and performance shifts. Pressure reveals aspects of natural gifts that remain hidden in ordinary conditions. Some individuals become sharper, faster, and more intuitive under deadlines. Their cognition consolidates, eliminating unnecessary steps. Their emotional clarity increases, and their decision-making improves. Others degrade under pressure, not because they lack ability, but because their nervous system requires spaciousness and reflection to access their strengths. Performance shifts under pressure highlight differences in cognitive processing styles. High-pressure performers often excel in leadership, crisis management, tactical strategy, or rapid synthesis. Their gifts activate through intensity. They can tolerate complexity without losing coherence. However, they may struggle with slow, methodical environments that feel tedious or uninspiring. Conversely, low-pressure performers thrive when given time to explore, refine, and process deeply. Their natural gifts often express through analysis, creativity, research, or relational work. High-pressure situations compress their cognition, making it harder to access nuance or depth. They may appear less capable under stress, even though their gifts exceed those of high-pressure performers in calm conditions. Understanding pressure response prevents misdiagnosis. A person who collapses under artificial deadlines may actually possess extraordinary gifts that require a different rhythm. Institutions often misinterpret this as laziness or incompetence, penalizing individuals whose strengths shine in unconstrained environments. Performance shifts also indicate where energy is generated or drained. If pressure increases clarity, alignment is present. If pressure collapses clarity, misalignment or nervous system mismatch is occurring. Individuals who learn their pressure profile can choose roles that match their natural rhythm, ensuring consistent access to their gifts rather than intermittent flashes of competence. 37. Solitude versus social context, where gifts strengthen. Natural gifts develop differently in solitude and social environments. Some individuals access their deepest clarity when alone, free from external noise and relational dynamics. Their creativity, insight, or analytical strength intensifies without interruption. Others gain energy through interaction, discovering new ideas or emotional intelligence through engagement. Their gifts emerge through dialogue, collaboration, or group dynamics. Solitary processors thrive when given uninterrupted space. Their minds unfold naturally, generating precision and originality. However, They may struggle to express their gifts publicly if environments demand constant interaction. Without intentional practice, their internal clarity may not translate into external communication, creating a gap between perception and influence. Social processors experience the opposite pattern. Interaction sharpens their gifts. They read emotional cues, respond fluidly, and adapt quickly. Yet they may struggle to access depth and solitude, mistaking quiet as emptiness rather than potential. Their gifts strengthen through relational energy, making them well-suited for roles involving leadership, teaching, negotiation, or healing. Many individuals are hybrids, requiring a balance. Solitude allows integration. Social engagement provides stimulation. The ratio varies widely and reflects deeper wiring rather than preference. Misinterpreting this ratio leads people to choose environments that drain them rather than support their development. Understanding where gifts strengthen helps individuals design lifestyles and work rhythms that increase access to their architecture. When people spend time in the contexts that nourish their wiring, gifts become more consistent, more reliable, and more refined. 38. Place sensitivity. How locations affect you. Environmental sensitivity extends beyond sensory input. Some individuals are highly influenced by the energetic, cultural, or symbolic qualities of physical locations. Place affects mood, cognition, creativity, and emotional regulation. These responses are often stable across time, revealing patterns connected to natural gifts. Some people think clearly in nature but struggle in dense urban environments. Others feel energized in cities and subdued in quiet spaces. Place sensitivity reflects how the nervous system interprets environmental complexity. Highly sensitive individuals may experience overstimulation in chaotic environments, limiting access to their gifts. Others thrive in dynamic settings because external movement aligns with their internal rhythm. Neither pattern is inherently superior. Each supports different types of gifted expression. Cultural environment also matters. Some individuals flourish in communities that value intellect, creativity, or introspection. Others thrive in environments that emphasize action, innovation, or resilience. When cultural values match internal wiring, gifts accelerate. When values conflict, gifts shrink or become distorted. People often misinterpret place sensitivity as personal flaw. They assume they lack discipline or maturity when a location deadens their clarity. In reality, the nervous system is responding accurately to environmental mismatch. Relocating or adjusting surroundings frequently restores access to natural gifts without additional effort. Recognizing place sensitivity empowers individuals to choose environments that stabilize their energy. Whether through full relocation or simple atmospheric adjustments, aligning place with wiring increases cognitive bandwidth and emotional coherence, allowing gifts to emerge with far greater consistency. 39. Media diet and attention fragmentation. Media consumption profoundly affects the expression of natural gifts because it shapes attention, emotional regulation, and cognitive patterning. Modern digital environments compete aggressively for mental bandwidth, fracturing focus and training the brain toward rapid, shallow processing. This fragmentation disrupts access to deeper layers of cognition where natural gifts operate most effectively. Attention is a finite resource. When smartphones, social apps, and constant notifications dominate cognitive space, individuals lose the internal quiet necessary for insight, creativity, or strategic thinking. Fragmented attention reduces the mind's ability to track long-term patterns, weakening gifts related to depth, nuance, or synthesis. Even relational gifts suffer when emotional bandwidth is drained by constant stimulation. Media also influences emotional tone. Exposure to outrage-driven content dysregulates the nervous system, pulling gifted individuals into reactive states where clarity diminishes. Conversely, intentional media, books, lectures, thoughtful discussions, strengthens the mental structures that support natural gifts. The type of media consumed becomes an unseen training regimen shaping either clarity or confusion. People often underestimate how much their media diet affects their perceived identity. When attention fragments, individuals interpret the resulting fog as personal failure. They may believe their gifts have weakened when, in truth, they are simply overstimulated. Reducing digital noise often restores abilities they feared were lost. Curating media consumption is not about restriction, but about alignment. When individuals choose input that nourishes their wiring, attention stabilizes, emotional coherence strengthens, and natural gifts regain the bandwidth they require. The mind becomes a clearer instrument for its inherent capacities rather than a battleground of competing distractions. 40. Reclaiming signal from noise. Reclaiming signal from noise is essential for restoring natural gifts in a world saturated with distraction, expectation, and external pressure. Noise includes anything that distorts perception, fragments attention, or pulls individuals away from their structural truth. This may be social obligations, digital overwhelm, internalized conditioning, or chronic stress patterns. Signal refers to the subtle, consistent indicators of one's authentic architecture, patterns of curiosity, ease, insight, or resonance. Reclaiming signal begins by reducing cognitive clutter. When individuals remove unnecessary commitments or overstimulation, the nervous system recalibrates. Mental clarity increases, revealing long-suppressed inclinations. What once felt confusing becomes discernible. Natural gifts become easier to identify because the internal noise that once masked them begins to dissipate. Reflection also plays a role. When people create intentional pauses, they notice which activities generate energy and which drain it. They notice what their mind returns to when unprompted. These observations reveal the underlying structure of their gifts more reliably than external validation or theoretical frameworks. Reclaiming signal may require uncomfortable changes. People may need to set boundaries with relationships that reinforce old masks. They may need to shift work environments or alter habits that undermine clarity. These adjustments are not avoidance, but alignment, creating conditions in which natural gifts can function without distortion. As signal strengthens, individuals experience a sense of internal coherence. Decisions become easier because they align with deep structure rather than social noise. Creativity returns, intuition sharpens, and effort-to-output ratios improve. What felt like struggle becomes flow. Reclaiming signal is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process that maintains the integrity of one's architecture amid a noisy world. Part 5. Archetypes and Personality Lenses. 41. Temperament and Core Orientation. Temperament represents the foundational energetic pattern that shapes how individuals move through life. It influences sensitivity, reactivity, pacing, and the degree to which one engages the world internally or externally. Unlike personality, which evolves with experience, temperament is a stable blueprint present from infancy. Its consistency makes it a reliable indicator of how natural gifts will eventually express themselves when given the right context. Understanding temperament prevents misinterpreting gifted tendencies as behavioral issues or personal flaws. Core orientation builds upon temperament by revealing the direction of a person's motivational flow. Some individuals orient toward introspection, gaining clarity through inner dialogue and reflective processes. Others orient outward, gaining energy from interaction and environmental engagement. These orientations are not choices, they are structural. They determine where attention naturally gravitates and how information is processed. When individuals run against their orientation, their natural gifts become harder to access, leading to friction and fatigue. Misalignment often begins early when environments demand traits that contradict an individual's inherent rhythm. An introverted child may be pushed toward constant social stimulation, disconnecting them from their internal processing strengths. An extrovert child may be pressured into silence and compliance, blunting their expressive gifts. These mismatches distort development and create identities shaped around coping rather than authenticity. Temperament reveals what is natural, while orientation reveals how that nature intends to move. Recognizing temperament also helps contextualize emotional responses. Highly reactive individuals may possess deep empathy or perceptual gifts that require regulation rather than suppression. Low reactive individuals may excel under pressure, yet need deliberate emotional cultivation to avoid detachment. No temperament is superior. Each contains a doorway to specific natural gifts. The task is alignment, not comparison. When individuals learn to work with their temperament and orientation rather than against them, their gifts stabilize. They find environments that nourish rather than drain them, and their energy becomes a clearer reflection of their architecture. This alignment enables natural gifts to emerge consistently without distortion from forced adaptation. 42. Introversion, extroversion, and gift direction. Introversion and extroversion reflect where individuals process energy, not how social they appear. Introverts recharge internally, drawing clarity from solitude, introspection, and spacious environments. Their gifts often arise when external noise is minimized, allowing their inner architecture to organize perception without interference. They may excel in analysis, creative exploration, symbolic interpretation, or any field requiring depth and sustained focus. Their challenge lies in environments that demand constant outward engagement, which can deplete their internal bandwidth. Extroverts operate differently. They gain momentum through interaction, movement, and relational exchange. Dialogue sharpens their thinking, and social engagement stimulates innovation. Their natural gifts often involve leadership, persuasion, emotional influence, or dynamic problem solving. When isolated for too long, their clarity diminishes because their cognition depends on external stimulation to activate the full range of their capacity. Their challenge is remaining grounded enough to avoid dispersing energy across too many channels. Ambiverts blend both orientations, shifting fluidly depending on context, nervous system state, or developmental stage. Their adaptability broadens the range of environments where their gifts can flourish. However, their flexibility can confuse identity if they assume they must choose one orientation exclusively. Recognizing this fluidity liberates them from unnecessary self-categorization and strengthens their ability to regulate engagement intentionally. Gift direction becomes clear when individuals observe where insight and energy emerge most reliably: solitude or interaction. Introverts tend to generate original insight alone and refine it socially. Extroverts tend to generate insight socially and refine it internally afterward. Neither approach is preferable. Each reflects a different developmental rhythm. When individuals align their environments, responsibilities, and daily rhythms with their true orientation, their access to natural gifts becomes stable and sustainable. They stop wasting energy performing against their wiring and begin thriving within the architecture that has always guided them. 43. Analytical, holistic, and symbolic minds. Human cognition expresses itself through distinct orientations that shape how individuals interpret reality. Analytical minds focus on precision, breaking complexity into parts to reveal structure and logic. They thrive on clarity, consistency, and methodical progression. Their natural gifts include strategic planning, technical mastery, problem decomposition, and error detection. Their challenge is avoiding reductionism, missing connections that fall outside narrow parameters. Yet their clarity provides essential stability in systems that require order. Holistic minds perceive the world as interconnected patterns rather than isolated components. They notice relationships first, intuiting the shape of systems before identifying specific parts. Their natural gifts include systems thinking, diplomacy, ecological awareness, and anticipatory insight. They excel at predicting outcomes and sensing trajectories long before others recognize emerging patterns. Their challenge lies in articulating these insights to more linear thinkers, as their understanding appears to leap across steps that feel invisible to others. Symbolic minds interpret reality through metaphor, imagery, and archetype. They understand meaning intuitively, translating internal impressions into creative form. Their natural gifts emerge in artistry, spiritual insight, narrative construction, mythic interpretation, or profound emotional literacy. They excel at revealing truths that cannot be accessed through logic alone. Their challenge is grounding their vision so it becomes practical rather than purely imaginative, ensuring their insights influence reality rather than hover above it. These cognitive types often coexist within the same individual, forming a unique blend that shapes learning, problem-solving, and expression. Misalignment occurs when individuals are pressured to adopt cognitive methods foreign to their wiring, leading to confusion, frustration, or self-doubt. When people embrace their natural orientation, learning accelerates, communication clarifies, and natural gifts become more predictable. Understanding cognitive style increases self-trust. It also improves collaboration, as each orientation compensates for blind spots in the others. Recognizing these differences transforms group dynamics, enabling teams to integrate precision, vision, and meaning into a coherent whole. 44. The builder, the healer, the seer, the strategist. The builder archetype embodies structure, stability, and order. Builders transform concepts into functioning systems, organizations, technologies, rituals, or methods. Their natural gifts include organization, persistence, craftsmanship, and operational intelligence. Builders often feel compelled to bring coherence to environments lacking structure. Their challenge is avoiding rigidity. Systems must evolve as conditions change, and builders sometimes resist updates to their own creations. The healer archetype restores harmony. Healers detect emotional states, relational imbalances, and subtle tensions others miss. Their natural gifts include empathy, regulation, attunement, reconciliation, and somatic intuition. They bring coherence to environments fractured by conflict or stress. Their challenge lies in boundary maintenance. Without clarity, they absorb what they attempt to heal, losing themselves in others' pain. The seer archetype perceives underlying patterns. Seers detect truths hidden beneath surface appearances. Their natural gifts include intuition, symbolic recognition, foresight, and the ability to interpret meaning within complexity. They act as interpreters of both internal and external worlds. Their challenge is translating insight into language others can understand. Unarticulated vision cannot influence reality. The strategist archetype navigates complexity with clarity. Strategists excel at analysis, prediction, and mapping trajectories. Their natural gifts include decision-making, long-term vision, risk assessment, and tactical organization. They understand leverage points and guide systems with precision. Their challenge is preserving empathy. Excessive distance can cause relational disconnect, undermining trust. These archetypes are not roles, but orientations. A person may embody multiple archetypes across life stages or blend them into unique expressions. Recognizing one's archetype clarifies both strengths and vulnerabilities, offering a blueprint for how natural gifts can be expressed with maturity and impact. Archetypes provide language for the deep patterns shaping human contribution, allowing individuals to understand their instinctive roles within groups and systems. 45. The teacher, the protector, the artist, the judge. The teacher archetype translates complexity into understanding. Teachers possess natural gifts in explanation, synthesis, and guidance. They intuitively sense where others' comprehension falters and adjust communication accordingly. Their presence creates clarity in confusion and meaning in uncertainty. Their challenge is avoiding over-control. Teaching becomes ineffective when the teacher attempts to dictate learning rather than facilitate it. The protector archetype safeguards stability. Protectors sense danger, physical, emotional, or structural, before it becomes visible. Their natural gifts include vigilance, courage, boundary enforcement, and commitment. They bring steadiness to environments vulnerable to collapse. Their challenge is distinguishing true threats from perceived ones. Unrefined protectors may slip into hypervigilance or overprotection, limiting growth. The artist archetype reveals emotional or symbolic truth. Artists access meaning that cannot be articulated through logic alone. Their natural gifts involve creativity, emotional expression, aesthetic sensitivity, and intuitive translation of experience into form. They reshape cultural narratives and illuminate internal landscapes. Their challenge lies in consistency. Inspiration fluctuates, and environments that undervalue artistry may weaken their confidence or stability. The judge archetype discerns truth with precision. Judges read intentions, evaluate fairness, and identify inconsistencies others overlook. Their natural gifts include discernment, ethical clarity, structural awareness, and principled decision-making. They stabilize groups by upholding integrity. Their challenge is balancing truth with compassion. Judgment without empathy becomes rigidity rather than wisdom. These archetypes illuminate how individuals naturally perceive and respond to the world. Understanding one's archetypal bias clarifies why certain tasks feel natural, certain injustices feel intolerable, and certain roles feel obligatory. Rather than confining identity, archetypes reveal the psychological pattern through which natural gifts operate, offering structure for maturation and purpose. 46. Humor, language, and reality framing gifts. Humor, language, and reality framing represent sophisticated forms of intelligence frequently underestimated in traditional systems. Humor requires lightning-fast pattern recognition, emotional sensitivity, and precise timing. Individuals with this gift reveal contradictions, relieve tension, and illuminate truth through subtle reframing. Their natural gifts often serve as social regulation tools, diffusing conflict and shifting emotional states within groups. Language-oriented individuals possess an intuitive sense of narrative structure, rhythm, and tone. They communicate with clarity that exceeds formal training, often translating complexity into accessible form. Their natural gifts support teaching, negotiation, writing, diplomacy, or counseling. These individuals can articulate insights that others feel but cannot express, making them bridges between internal and external experience. Reality framers shape worldview. They possess an ability to contextualize events meaningfully, reframing challenges into opportunities or chaos into coherence. Their natural gifts influence group morale, cultural narratives, and shared understanding. This gift often appears subtle but profoundly affects how others interpret their own experience. These capacities often go unrecognized because they do not fit standardized categories of intelligence. Yet they play critical roles in shaping interpersonal environments, organizational culture, and emotional climates. Without them, teams lose cohesion, communities lose shared meaning, and individuals lose access to the interpretive frameworks that make growth possible. Recognizing these gifts requires paying attention to subtle influence. Individuals who regularly shift the emotional temperature of a room, who narrate experience with unusual clarity, or who bring new meaning to old problems often carry powerful framing intelligence. When cultivated, these gifts enhance leadership, communication, and the emotional resilience of everyone they touch. 47. Risk tolerance and the gift of courage. Risk tolerance plays a central role in how natural gifts manifest under uncertain conditions. Individuals with high risk tolerance experience activation rather than paralysis when confronted with the unknown. Their nervous system perceives uncertainty as opportunity, allowing creativity, intuition, and strategic cognition to sharpen. These individuals often excel in innovation, crisis leadership, entrepreneurship, or exploration because their architecture thrives on dynamic challenge. However, high-risk individuals must discern true courage from impulsivity. When unmanaged, their strengths morph into recklessness, driven by stimulation rather than intention. No natural gift remains healthy without regulation. The gift of courage becomes powerful only when paired with discernment, responsibility, and awareness of consequences. Low-risk individuals possess a different form of strength. Their cautious wiring enables them to foresee hazards, maintain stability, and protect systems from unnecessary volatility. Their natural gifts flourish in environments requiring precision, consistency, or long-term planning. They may excel in governance, operations, analysis, medicine, or anything requiring reliability under routine conditions. Their caution is not fear, it is architecture. Risk profiles are often misinterpreted due to cultural biases that glorify boldness. Many courageous individuals operate from grounded assessment rather than thrill-seeking, while many cautious individuals anchor collective safety. Both patterns are essential. Mislabeling one as superior distorts development and leads individuals into misaligned roles. Understanding risk tolerance allows individuals to choose pursuits aligned with their nervous system. When risk-leaning people operate within unpredictability, their natural gifts accelerate. When risk-averse individuals operate within stability, there's flourish as well. Matching risk environment to wiring unlocks consistent, sustainable excellence. 48. The shadow side of each natural gift. Every natural gift contains the potential for distortion when expressed without maturity, regulation, or context. This shadow does not indicate deficiency. It emerges because gifts are powerful forces that require integration. Empathy becomes enmeshment when boundaries collapse. Creativity becomes escapism when ungrounded. Strategic thinking becomes manipulation when detached from ethics. Vision becomes delusion when disconnected from reality. The shadow reflects magnitude, not flaw. The shadow often emerges earliest in life. Children naturally explore their gifts without understanding impact. A perceptive child may intrude on others' privacy. A confident child may dominate peers. A curious child may dismantle objects or challenge authority. These behaviors reveal raw architecture, yet adults often misinterpret them as disobedience or defect. When gifts are punished at the shadow stage, individuals internalize shame rather than receiving guidance and refinement. Stress amplifies shadow expression. Under pressure, gifts revert to primitive forms because regulation decreases. Pattern recognizers overanalyze. Healers overfunction. Leaders control. Artists withdraw. These regressions highlight the need for boundaries, self-regulation, and intentional pacing. Maturity involves recognizing these patterns without collapsing into guilt or denial. Shadow becomes teacher. It reveals where development is needed, where wounds intersect with wiring, and where boundaries must strengthen. When individuals learn to regulate and contextualize their gifts, shadow forms transform into integrated strength. Compassion replaces enmeshment. Vision replaces fantasy. Structure replaces rigidity. Understanding shadow is essential for ethical and sustainable development of natural gifts. It allows individuals to wield their capacity without harming themselves or others, creating pathways toward mastery rather than dysfunction. Part 6. Astrology as a mapping tool, not fate. 51. Astrology as pattern language, not destiny. Astrology operates as a symbolic pattern language rather than a deterministic force governing human behavior. Its value lies in offering interpretive frameworks that describe tendencies, psychological rhythms, and perceptual orientations. These patterns help individuals identify recurring themes in their lives, giving structure to self-observation and guiding awareness toward aspects of their natural gifts that may otherwise remain abstract. The system functions best when treated as reflective rather than prescriptive. Because astrology uses metaphor and archetype, it organizes complexity in ways that allow people to articulate internal states with greater clarity. It provides a vocabulary for describing motivations, sensitivities, and cognitive inclinations that might not fit neatly within conventional psychological categories. When individuals examine these symbolic patterns alongside lived experience, they gain nuanced insight into how their gifts activate in varied contexts and why certain environments feel naturally aligned. Astrology becomes problematic only when interpreted rigidly. Deterministic thinking constricts possibility, implying that individuals are confined by symbols rather than shaped by choice, development, and environment. Natural gifts do not emerge from planetary influence. They arise from biological architecture, psychological orientation, and experiential refinement. Astrology simply mirrors many of these processes through archetypal imagery that helps individuals reflect on their inner landscape. By approaching astrology as language rather than law, individuals remain open to growth. They can use symbolic patterns as prompts for introspection without conceding authority to external systems. This balanced perspective encourages self-responsibility and prevents projection of agency onto forces outside oneself. Pattern language enhances discernment, supporting the maturation of natural gifts rather than limiting their evolution. When interpreted responsibly, astrology becomes one of many tools for self-understanding. It offers structure for interpreting subtle tendencies and contextualizing deep-seated rhythms. Individuals remain free to develop their gifts through intention and practice while using symbolic insight to clarify the internal dynamics shaping their strengths. In this role, astrology complements psychology and introspective disciplines, enriching self-awareness without constraining identity. 52. Sun sign tendencies and natural gifts. The sun sign symbolizes an individual's central orientation, the mode through which they express vitality, purpose, and identity. While it does not determine natural gifts, it illuminates the environment in which those gifts thrive. It reflects how individuals recharge, how they initiate action, and what forms of engagement awaken their deeper capacities. Understanding these tendencies allows people to create conditions that support rather than suppress their natural architecture. Fire-oriented sun signs often express their gifts through initiative, courage, and creative momentum. They thrive when permitted to explore possibilities, confront challenges, and shape their surroundings through instinctive insight. Their natural gifts often activate through action rather than contemplation, making stagnation particularly disruptive. When confined to rigid structures, their strengths may collapse into impulsivity or restlessness, masking true potential. Earth-oriented sun signs express their gifts through reliability, craftsmanship, and grounded execution. They excel when operating within consistent rhythms that allow gradual development of mastery. Their approach to giftedness is rooted in patience and incremental refinement, making stability essential for sustainable growth. When placed in chaotic environments, they may become overly controlled or withdrawn, weakening the steady foundation that supports their capacities. Air signs express their orientation through intellect, communication, and social cognition. Their gifts often emerge through conceptual clarity, linguistic precision, or innovative problem-solving. They require mental freedom and stimulating environments that encourage exploration of diverse ideas. When restricted to purely emotional or routine-focused spaces, their strengths may fragment or lose coherence, obscuring their natural brilliance. Water signs express their gifts through emotional depth, intuition, and symbolic understanding. Their capacities activate when emotional safety, meaning, and internal rhythm are respected. They thrive in environments that invite sensitivity rather than critique it. When forced into hyperrational or insensitive structures, their gifts retreat into defensiveness or overwhelm. 53. Moon sign needs and emotional gifts. The moon sign describes instinctive emotional responses, internal regulation, and the conditions necessary for psychological balance. Because natural gifts depend on stable emotional architecture, understanding moon tendencies provides insight into how individuals maintain coherence. Emotional gifts, such as empathy, intuitive perception, and relational intelligence, rely on environments that match these internal rhythms rather than conflict with them. Some moon placements require solitude, predictability, and minimal stimulation to remain regulated. These individuals access their natural gifts most reliably when emotional noise is low, allowing their inner world to settle into equilibrium. Their perceptual or intuitive capacities sharpen only when internal calm is preserved. Excessive social pressure or rapid emotional fluctuation disrupts their bandwidth, causing their strengths to scatter or misfire. Other moon placements require movement, connection, or expressive engagement to maintain balance. Their emotional architecture depends on relational circulation rather than containment. Their gifts activate through exchange, conversation, collaboration, or shared experience. Without opportunities for connection, they stagnate, and their strengths lose vitality. Emotional suppression weakens their ability to support or understand others. Moon tendencies also reveal vulnerabilities that intersect with gifted architecture. Highly permeable placements may absorb others' emotions, unintentionally carrying burdens that distort their natural gifts. More reserved placements may detach too quickly, limiting the depth required for relational insight. Recognizing these patterns supports emotional hygiene and enables clearer expression of giftedness. Understanding the moon as symbol rather than authority encourages emotional responsibility. It clarifies what individuals need to remain balanced and how emotional environments support or sabotage their strengths. Emotional needs are not indulgences. They are structural components of natural gifts. When honored, gifts become reliable. When ignored, they become unstable or inconsistent. 54. Rising sign expression and social gifts. The rising sign represents the perceptual interface between self and environment, the style through which individuals approach new situations, present themselves, and initiate interaction. It shapes first impressions, instinctive social behavior, and the visible expression of natural gifts. While deeper layers of identity unfold with time, the rising sign influences how gifts appear upon initial contact and how individuals navigate the social field where many gifts take form. Some rising placements initiate through assertiveness, confidence, or clarity of intention. These individuals move toward experience with directness that makes their gifts immediately visible. Their strengths often manifest in leadership, communication, or swift problem-solving. However, Their direct approach can be misinterpreted as intensity or dominance when others cannot see the deeper motivations guiding their behavior. Refining emotional tone enhances their impact without undermining authenticity. Other rising placements approach the world with observation, diplomacy, or care. Their gifts emerge gradually, often requiring relational trust or environmental stability before becoming apparent. These individuals may excel in deep analysis, emotional attunement, or subtle influence. Because their presence is understated, their gifts are sometimes overlooked, prompting the need for intentional self-representation. Their social strength lies in depth rather than immediacy. The rising sign also influences pacing. Some individuals engage quickly, reshaping environments with ease. Others acclimate slowly, needing time before their gifts activate fully. Recognizing this rhythm prevents premature judgment and encourages environments that support authentic unfolding rather than rushed performance. Finally, rising tendencies shape the gap between internal identity and external perception. A person with profound inner sensitivity may appear aloof due to a protective rising sign. Another with penetrating intelligence may appear casual or lighthearted until deeper interaction reveals complexity. Understanding this gap helps individuals communicate their natural gifts accurately and maintain relationships built on truth rather than projection. 55. Mercury and cognitive gifts. Mercury symbolizes cognition, communication, learning style, and how individuals process information. Its placement describes the structure of thought, whether ideas form rapidly or slowly, concretely or abstractly, logically or intuitively. Natural gifts involving intelligence, articulation, problem-solving, or pattern recognition all rely on cognitive architecture shaped in part by Mercury's symbolic domain. Understanding these tendencies helps individuals refine environments that enhance clarity rather than distort their thinking. Some Mercury placements think quickly, moving through ideas with agility. These individuals often generate insights in bursts, synthesizing diverse information with ease. Their natural gifts may include conceptual innovation, rapid pattern mapping, or intellectual flexibility. While their speed is an asset, it can lead to incomplete refinement unless balanced by deliberate review. They thrive in environments that reward exploration and conversational exchange. Other placements favor slower, deeper cognition. These individuals analyze, contemplate, and integrate information gradually, often producing more precise or comprehensive understanding than fast thinkers. Their natural gifts include structural insight, long-form problem-solving, and capacity for sustained concentration. They excel in environments that allow time for depth. Pressure to think instantly undermines their clarity and confidence. Mercury also shapes communication tendencies. Some individuals express ideas directly and systematically. Others communicate through metaphor, narrative, or emotional nuance. Both styles carry intelligence. They simply encode meaning differently. When individuals honor their natural communication rhythm, articulation becomes an extension of their giftedness rather than a struggle against internal wiring. Understanding Mercury placement supports mastery by clarifying cognitive strengths and vulnerabilities. Individuals learn which learning environments enhance their capacity and which suppress it. They develop communication strategies that reflect their genuine architecture and avoid misalignment. When cognition works in harmony with natural wiring, giftedness becomes consistent, coherent, and reliably accessible. 56. Venus and harmonization gifts. Venus symbolizes relational intelligence, aesthetic sensitivity, and the capacity to create harmony within and between people. Its placement describes how individuals connect, what they value, and how they resolve tension. Many natural gifts, such as diplomacy, emotional support, artistic expression, or social cohesion, depend on Venusian tendencies. Understanding this symbolic pattern clarifies how individuals cultivate harmony and the environments in which their relational strengths flourish. Some Venus placements express harmony through warmth, empathy, and emotional responsiveness. These individuals possess gifts in mediation, nurturing, and maintaining group equilibrium. Their presence softens tension and fosters connection. However, their sensitivity may lead them to prioritize others' needs over their own, risking depletion unless they consciously uphold boundaries that protect emotional stability. Other Venus placements harmonize through structure, fairness, and principled alignment. They create balance by defining expectations, clarifying roles, and maintaining integrity within systems. Their natural gifts include negotiation, ethical reasoning, and the ability to stabilize environments through order rather than emotional caretaking. Their challenge lies in recognizing when emotional nuance is needed alongside structural clarity. Venus also governs aesthetic perception. Individuals with strong placement may possess giftedness in design, music, visual art, or symbolic interpretation. Their sensitivity to proportion, rhythm, and emotional tone allows them to create experiences that convey meaning without words. When undervalued, this sensitivity may manifest as insecurity. When cultivated, it becomes a powerful channel for expression and connection. Understanding Venus tendencies allows individuals to navigate relationships more intentionally, aligning their approach with their intrinsic wiring. It clarifies how they give and receive support, how they influence group dynamics, and how they stabilize emotional climates. When harmonization is practiced consciously, natural gifts tied to connection become reliable sources of strength and contribution. 57. Mars and drive-based gifts. Mars represents drive, motivation, assertiveness, and the capacity to take decisive action. Its placement describes how individuals pursue goals, confront challenges, and mobilize energy. Natural gifts require activation through effort, meaning Mars influences how people translate internal potential into outward expression. Understanding Mars tendencies helps individuals develop rhythms of action that support rather than sabotage their gifts. Some Mars placements operate with immediacy, responding to stimuli quickly and confidently. Their natural gifts include courage, initiative, and the ability to navigate uncertainty. They excel in dynamic environments requiring rapid adaptation or decisive leadership. However, their challenge lies in avoiding impulsivity. Without grounding, their strengths become scattered, and effort becomes reaction rather than intention. Other placements build momentum gradually. These individuals act with deliberation, gathering information and assessing risk before committing. Their gifts include precision, endurance, and long-term reliability. They thrive in processes that reward consistency rather than speed. Their challenge is recognizing when caution becomes avoidance, preventing necessary action. Mars also governs conflict style. Some engage directly, addressing issues head-on. Others prefer strategic navigation or emotional diplomacy. Each style supports specific forms of giftedness. Direct engagement fosters clarity and leadership. Strategic navigation supports negotiation and problem-solving. Emotional diplomacy strengthens relational intelligence. Problems arise only when individuals are forced into styles that contradict their wiring. Understanding Mars placement empowers individuals to refine the energy behind their natural gifts. They learn when to accelerate, when to pause, and how to act with intention rather than compulsion. Drive becomes a tool rather than a reflex, supporting maturation in both personal and professional domains. 58. Saturn and mastery through constraint. Saturn symbolizes discipline, responsibility, and the process through which individuals refine their natural gifts over time. It represents boundaries, limitations, and the friction that transforms raw potential into stable skill. Saturn is not an oppressive force, but a structuring influence that focuses energy, exposes weaknesses, and strengthens capacity through consistent effort. Understanding Saturn tendencies clarifies how individuals approach long-term development. Some Saturn placements require individuals to cultivate resilience through repeated challenges. Their gifts are refined slowly, shaped by perseverance rather than immediate success. Early experiences may involve frustration or delay, not as punishment, but as training. Through disciplined effort, these individuals gain mastery that remains dependable under pressure. Their strength lies in endurance, not speed. Other placements emphasize responsibility. These individuals refine their gifts through service, leadership, or stewardship of meaningful tasks. Their development accelerates when they accept roles that demand reliability. While responsibility can feel burdensome, it provides structure that stabilizes giftedness. Their challenge is recognizing when to release obligations that exceed their capacity. Saturn also governs boundaries, clarifying where individuals must conserve energy or refuse misaligned commitments. Without Saturn's influence, gifted individuals may scatter their abilities or rely solely on raw talent. With it, gifts become precise, disciplined, and sustainable. Boundaries are not restrictions, they are containers for growth. Understanding Saturn as symbolic allows individuals to reinterpret difficulty as opportunity. They learn to distinguish between obstacles that require perseverance and conditions that require change. This discernment transforms struggle into grounded development. Through Saturn's influence, natural gifts evolve from potential into mastery. 59. Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, and deep change gifts. The outer planets symbolize forces of deep transformation that shape the evolution of natural gifts across time. Neptune governs imagination, intuition, and boundary dissolution. Individuals influenced by Neptune may possess gifts in spiritual perception, dream intelligence, symbolic interpretation, or artistic flow. Their challenge is maintaining grounding so that subtle perception enhances clarity rather than dissolving it. Uranus represents innovation, disruption, and liberation from outdated structures. Those aligned with Uranus often carry gifts in originality, reform, unconventional insight, or systems redesign. Their nervous systems track patterns others overlook, enabling breakthroughs in stagnant environments. Their challenge lies in maintaining consistency, as rapid insight can outpace practical follow-through. Pluto symbolizes depth, regeneration, and psychological insight. Plutonian individuals possess gifts in transformation, crisis navigation, power analysis, or shadow work. They perceive underlying motives and systemic patterns with unusual precision. Their challenge is managing intensity so others can engage without overwhelm. When balanced, their gifts catalyze profound healing and structural change. These planetary archetypes describe how individuals handle upheaval, insight, and internal evolution. They do not create gifts, but illuminate the context in which gifts mature. Understanding these deep change patterns helps individuals navigate transformative periods with greater self-trust, recognizing that disruption often reveals deeper layers of capacity. 60. Cross-checking astrology with lived evidence. Astrology gains value only when symbolic patterns align with lived experience. Without empirical observation, astrological interpretation becomes abstraction disconnected from reality. Cross-checking involves examining whether described tendencies consistently appear in behavior, perception, emotional rhythm, and relational dynamics. Natural gifts are validated through expression, not through symbolism. The first step in cross-checking is honest reflection. Individuals must compare symbolic descriptions with genuine tendencies rather than idealized self-images. Accurate self-observation reveals which archetypes resonate and which do not. Misalignment is not error. It clarifies where symbolism reflects misunderstanding or where development has shifted expression beyond initial tendencies. Recurring patterns hold the most weight. If an individual repeatedly demonstrates crisis leadership, emotional attunement, symbolic perception, or strategic clarity, these behaviors confirm genuine gifts regardless of astrological placement. Astrology becomes meaningful only when it articulates what already exists. Symbolism should illuminate truth, not impose identity. Cross-checking also prevents self-limitation. Individuals may adopt astrological narratives that restrict growth if accepted without question. When symbolism is compared with actual experience, these narratives lose authority unless supported by evidence. This preserves autonomy and ensures that natural gifts evolve through choice, not through symbolic dependency. When symbolic frameworks and lived evidence are integrated responsibly, individuals gain deeper understanding of their architecture. Astrology becomes a reflective map rather than a controlling doctrine. In this role, it enhances the clarity and precision required to develop natural gifts with awareness, integrity, and grounded self-direction. Part 7. Perceptual and Psychic Style Gifts. 61. Intuition versus imagination. Intuition and imagination both arise from the inner world, but they are not the same faculty. Intuition is the nervous system and subconscious mind compressing vast amounts of information into a quiet, coherent signal. It draws from lived experience, micro-observations, emotional tone, and pattern memory, then presents a conclusion without showing its internal steps. Imagination, by contrast, is generative. It can produce images, scenarios, and stories with no obligation to accuracy or evidence, exploring possibility rather than describing actuality. The felt quality of intuition is usually calm, neutral, and concise. It often appears as a simple knowing, a quiet this way, not that way. Even if it contradicts preferences, it does not argue or insist, it just is. Imagination tends to be louder and more dramatic. It carries emotional charge, swings between extremes, and can shift rapidly as mood and desire change. Many people mistake this vividness for truth when it is simply creative energy doing its job. Intuition simplifies complexity. Even when it suggests something uncomfortable, it reduces confusion. Questions feel more resolved after listening. Imagination multiplies complexity by adding layers of what-ifs, alternative timelines, and symbolic interpretations. This is powerful for art, innovation, and scenario planning, but dangerous when mistaken for direct guidance. Natural gifts that rely on perception require knowing which voice is speaking so action remains grounded. One way to distinguish them is through testing and tracking. Intuition, when genuine, tends to be repeatedly accurate across time, especially in specific domains where your natural gifts are strongest. Imaginative scenarios vary widely and often do not manifest, though they may be useful prompts. By tracking impressions against outcomes, you teach your system which internal signals are trustworthy and which are speculative. When intuition and imagination are honored in their proper roles, they become allies. Intuition anchors you in reality, guiding decisions and revealing patterns your conscious mind cannot yet articulate. Imagination expands the field of options, helps you reframe obstacles, and supports creative experimentation. Together, they allow natural gifts to operate with both grounded clarity and expansive possibility. 62. Empathy versus emotional absorption. Empathy is the capacity to sense, understand, and emotionally resonate with others while remaining rooted in your own center. Emotional absorption is what happens when that resonance loses its boundary and other people's feelings flood your internal world as if they were your own. Both states feel intense, especially for those with relational or perceptual natural gifts. But one leads to clarity and compassion, while the other leads to confusion and exhaustion. A regulated empath can feel another's sadness, anger, or fear and still know, this is theirs, not mine. There is spaciousness around the experience. They can choose how to respond, by listening, supporting, or stepping back. An emotional absorber feels overwhelmed without understanding why. Their mood crashes in crowded rooms. Arguments linger in their body long after they end, and they may find themselves carrying anxiety that does not match their own life conditions. The difference is not about caring less. It is about maintaining differentiation. Empathy uses perception to gather accurate information about the emotional field. Absorption collapses the distinction between observer and environment. Many people with natural gifts in healing, counseling, or intuitive reading begin as absorbers. They mistake overload for depth and assume suffering is the cost of caring. In reality, it is a sign that boundaries and regulation skills have not yet caught up to their sensitivity. Transitioning from absorption to true empathy involves learning nervous system literacy. Grounding, breath, posture, and simple physical awareness give the body somewhere to put the emotional data it is picking up. Mental labeling helps as well. I am noticing fear in this person is very different from I am afraid. Over time, the system learns to keep perception and identity separate, allowing sensitivity without collapse. When empathy is clean, it becomes a refined natural gift. You can walk into a room and feel the emotional weather without being drenched by it. You can support others without burning out. You can sense what is unspoken and still choose action from your own values rather than from guilt or emotional compulsion. That is the difference between being ruled by sensitivity and wielding it with conscious care. 63. Somatic knowing and body-based insight. Somatic knowing is the way your body speaks intelligence before your mind forms words. Long before the cortex finishes its analysis, your muscles, breath, and viscera have already rendered a verdict about safety, alignment, and truth. Many people with strong natural gifts in intuition, healing, or decision-making notice that their gut or chest knows things before their thoughts do. The problem is not that the body is silent. It is that most people were never taught to listen. The nervous system continuously scans your environment, tracking microsignals in tone, posture, context, and history. It encodes these assessments as sensations, tightness, openness, heaviness, electricity, warmth, or a sudden drop in energy. A subtle contraction when you agree to something may be your body signaling, "This is not right for us." A relaxed expansion around a difficult choice may indicate deeper alignment than your fear-tinted thoughts can yet see. These signals are not mystical. They are fast pattern evaluations expressed through physiology. However, somatic data is not always pure intuition. Past trauma, chronic stress, and unresolved emotional patterns can hijack the body's signaling system. A raised voice might be read as danger not because the present person is unsafe, but because the system remembers earlier experiences. This does not make the body wrong. It means its current map is drawn with old ink. To use somatic knowing as part of your natural gifts, you must slowly separate genuine present-time signals from historical echoes. Practice begins with observation. Notice what your body does around different people, environments, tasks, and decisions. Track sensations and what follows them. Which feelings reliably precede good outcomes, and which signal self-sabotage, avoidance, or old fear. Over weeks and months, patterns emerge. You start to recognize the signature of your authentic yes, your true no, and your conditioned flinch. When somatic knowing is integrated, it becomes a powerful compass. Your body stops being an enemy to overcome and becomes an ally that quietly warns you when something is off and relaxes you into what is right. Combined with rational analysis and emotional awareness, body-based insight helps your natural gifts operate in 3 dimensions: mind, heart, and flesh, all informed and aligned. 64. Dream intelligence and symbol literacy. Dream intelligence is the subconscious mind's way of processing reality through symbolic narrative. While your waking self manages tasks and roles, your dreaming self recombines experiences, emotions, memories, and intuitions into dense, often surreal imagery. For people with strong natural gifts in symbolism, creativity, or spiritual perception, dreams become an additional channel of information, one that speaks in pictures instead of prose. The dream state loosens the rigid filters of waking thought. Emotional truths that are inconvenient during the day surface as metaphor at night. A recurring dream of being chased may reflect a pattern of avoiding confrontation. A crumbling house might symbolize an identity or life structure no longer capable of holding who you are becoming. Water, fire, doors, vehicles, strangers, and animals often appear as stand-ins for emotional states, transitions, or aspects of the self. Symbol literacy is the art of translating this internal language. It does not mean grabbing a generic dream book meaning and applying it blindly. Symbols are personal and contextual. A dog might represent loyalty for one person and danger for another, depending on their history. The emotional tone of the dream, the setting, the role you play, and what happens just before waking are all as important as the image itself. Natural gifts in interpretation sharpen as you learn to ask, what does this image feel like it points to in my actual life? Patterns matter more than individual dreams. One strange dream means little by itself. A theme that repeats across weeks or years signals an ongoing process in the psyche. Perhaps your dreams regularly show you missing trains or arriving late to flights. This might point to a deeper pattern around timing, readiness, or fear of opportunity. By journaling, revisiting, and reflecting, you build a bridge between your waking awareness and your nocturnal intelligence. When dream intelligence is respected, it becomes a quiet advisor. It will not tell you what to do in literal instructions, but it will reveal where your inner world is out of alignment, what needs attention, and which parts of your natural gifts are trying to grow. Dreams become nightly messages from the deeper self, asking to be listened to, decoded, and integrated into waking life. 65. Precognitive patterning and anticipation. Precognitive experiences are often framed as mystical prophecy, but one grounded way to understand them is as extreme pattern recognition. The brain and nervous system continuously process an enormous amount of data, far more than reaches conscious awareness. For some people, especially those with natural gifts in strategy, risk assessment, or intuitive perception, these background processes crystallize into a clear sense of this is about to happen, without a conscious path of reasoning. This anticipatory capacity can show up as knowing who is about to call, sensing a relationship will end before obvious signs appear, or feeling the direction of a group decision long before it is announced. Rather than violating causality, the system is picking up on micro-expressions, subtle tonal shifts, habitual tendencies, and prior outcomes, then compressing them into a forward-pointing impression. To the conscious mind, it feels like a jump into the future. Underneath, it is an accelerated reading of the present. However, not every fear or hope is precognitive. Anxiety loves to masquerade as prophecy. Desire does as well. Distinguishing authentic anticipatory patterning from emotional projection requires ruthless honesty. Genuine signals tend to be calm, oddly matter-of-fact, and not heavily charged. They might even contradict what you want to be true. Projections, by contrast, are loud, dramatic, and tightly entangled with craving or dread. Refining this natural gift involves tracking predictions over time. Write down your strong knowings and revisit them after the fact, which consistently align with reality and which reflect your biases or fears. Over months, you will see the difference between your clear channel and your noise. The goal is not to turn life into a prediction game, but to build trust in the subtle anticipatory intelligence that actually supports wise action. When precognitive patterning is integrated, it becomes practical foresight. You notice red flags earlier, adjust course before crises fully manifest, and sense timing windows for change or opportunity. You are not infallible, and you never surrender responsibility to the feeling, but you respect that part of your architecture that quietly says, "Look here. Pay attention now." Used this way, anticipatory gifts help keep your path aligned, adaptive, and responsive to reality as it unfolds. 66. Spatial and environmental sensitivity. Spatial and environmental sensitivity is the perceptual gift that reads rooms, locations, and physical layouts as clearly as others read faces. For some people, the nervous system tracks light levels, sound textures, color, clutter, architecture, and proximity as if they were emotional variables. Certain spaces feel nourishing, others draining, and the difference is not imaginary. It reflects how directly the environment supports or challenges the way their natural gifts function. Highly spatially sensitive individuals may struggle in environments full of visual noise, harsh lighting, or constant movement. Their nervous system is already processing subtle cues, and overload tips them into fatigue or irritability. Conversely, a well-balanced space, clear sight lines, coherent organization, natural light, intentional color, can make their mind feel sharper, their intuition clearer, and their body more at ease. The room itself becomes an ally in accessing their best thinking and perception. This sensitivity often comes with natural spatial intelligence. These individuals instinctively know where to place objects, how to arrange furniture, or how to design a workflow so that movement, attention, and relationships flow smoothly. They might be drawn to architecture, interior design, stage layout, event planning, or any domain where physical arrangement shapes experience. Their natural gifts let them see space as a living system rather than static background. Unrecognized, environmental sensitivity can look like fussiness, avoidance, or unexplained mood swings. A person may blame themselves for being difficult when, in truth, they are simply not built for fluorescent chaos or constant noise. Naming the pattern is the first step toward reducing unnecessary suffering. Once acknowledged, they can intentionally choose, design, or modify spaces to support their wiring. When spatial and environmental sensitivity is honored, it becomes a stabilizing asset. These individuals can create environments that bring out the best in themselves and others: calmer teams, clearer thinking, deeper connection. They understand that natural gifts do not exist in a vacuum. They are amplified or suppressed by the containers they inhabit. By shaping those containers, they make gifted expression more consistent, sustainable, and accessible. 67. Healing presence and nervous system regulation. Healing presence is less about techniques and more about what your nervous system transmits when you are simply there. Some people carry a natural gift for regulation. Others feel calmer, safer, or more honest in their company without knowing why. The gift is not that they take away pain. It is that their internal coherence offers a template the other person's system can unconsciously mirror, settling from chaos into relative order. A regulated presence is steady but not rigid. Breath is soft, attention is grounded, and there is space in their awareness for another person's experience without defensiveness or urgency. This does not mean they are always serene. It means they can return to center and hold that center in relationship. Their body says, "We are not in mortal danger." There is room for this feeling to exist. That message alone is profoundly healing for nervous systems used to being met with panic, dismissal, or control. The distortion of this gift appears when healing presence turns into compulsive caretaking. If a person believes they must always be the calm one, fix everyone, or absorb all distress, their own system becomes overloaded. Their natural gifts are then fueled by obligation and guilt instead of genuine regulation. Over time, they burn out, become resentful, or secretly collapse while still holding a pleasant exterior. Refinement comes from boundaries and self-care. A true healing presence is not on call 24 hours a day. It knows when to engage and when to step back. It recognizes that staying regulated sometimes means leaving a situation, saying no, or allowing others to experience discomfort without rushing to rescue. The gift strengthens when the person cares for their own body and emotional life as diligently as they attend to others. When healing presence is mature, it supports every other natural gift. It improves communication, deepens mentoring, enhances leadership, and stabilizes group dynamics. People feel more like themselves around such a person. They think more clearly, breathe more fully, and access their own insight. That is the quiet power of a regulated nervous system used consciously in service of collective coherence. 68. Discernment, signal, projection, and noise. Discernment is the internal sorting mechanism that decides what to trust inside your own perception. For anyone with intuitive, empathic, symbolic, or somatic natural gifts, it is the difference between wisdom and confusion. Your system constantly picks up impressions, emotions, images, and ideas. Some of these are signal, accurate reflections of reality. Some are projection, your own fears, hopes, and histories coloring what you perceive. The rest is noise, random mental chatter, and environmental static. Signal tends to feel steady, simple, and oddly unexcited. It may conflict with what you want, yet it carries a quiet conviction. Projection feels emotionally loaded. It surges with anger, fear, desire, or urgency, and often pulls you toward reactive interpretation. Noise is scattered, disjointed, and unfocused, a stream of half-thoughts and passing impressions that do not organize themselves into coherent direction. Learning to distinguish these three in the moment is core to the responsible use of perceptual gifts. The practice begins with slowing down before acting on perception. Instead of treating every inner movement as equally true, you pause and ask, is this calm or charged? Does this simplify or escalate? Does this resemble known patterns of my own trauma, anxiety, or wishful thinking? Over time, you learn your personal signatures. Perhaps true intuitive signal always arrives with a grounded bodily sense, while projection is accompanied by tight jaw and racing mind. Discernment also develops through feedback. You test your perceptions gently against reality. Where you were right, you strengthen trust in that shape of inner knowing. Where you were wrong, you update your map without shame, recognizing that refinement is part of stewarding natural gifts. The point is not to become infallible, but to become increasingly accurate, humble, and aware of your blind spots. When discernment is active, your gifts become more reliable and less dramatic. You speak more carefully, intervene more selectively, and stop chasing every inner ripple as if it were revelation. You learn to wait for signal that has passed through the filters of embodiment, reflection, and integrity. In that waiting, your perception deepens, and your contributions carry more weight and less collateral damage. 69. Grounding gifts without denying them. Grounding is what keeps perceptual and psychic-style gifts from pulling you out of your actual life. Many sensitive or intuitive people swing between two extremes, suppressing their perception to appear normal or over-identifying with it in a way that disconnects them from practical reality. Grounding is the middle path where natural gifts are fully acknowledged but integrated into a body, a schedule, a set of responsibilities, and a real-world context. At the physical level, grounding means anchoring attention and sensation. Feet on the floor, breath in the belly, awareness of the immediate environment. This stabilizes the nervous system and provides a reference point when inner images, emotions, or energies become intense. The more often you return to the body, the less likely you are to be swept away by every impression. Paradoxically, this makes your gifts clearer, not weaker, because they are now referenced to an actual here and now. At the psychological level, grounding means holding your gifts as capacities, not identity. You are not the empath, the seer, or the healer. You are a human being who happens to have those abilities. This distinction protects you from spiritual ego and from feeling compelled to perform your gifts constantly in order to feel valuable. It also gives you permission to rest, to be unsure, and to say, "I don't know," without feeling like you have failed your role. Practically, grounding shows up in habits: sleep, food, movement, finances, boundaries. Highly perceptive people sometimes neglect these basics, assuming that insight can replace structure. It cannot. Natural gifts are like high-voltage systems. They need solid wiring. The more stable your everyday life, the more capacity you have to handle intense perception without burning out or dissociating. When gifts are grounded, you can move between ordinary tasks and deep perception smoothly. You can wash dishes, answer emails, and handle money while still honoring your sensitivity and intuitive guidance. Your gifts stop being an escape from reality and become a way of engaging reality more fully, with clarity, compassion, and embodied presence. 70. Ethical perception and responsibility. Perceptual gifts carry power, and power always carries responsibility. When you can sense what others cannot, unspoken emotions, hidden patterns, likely outcomes, it becomes tempting to overstep. Ethical perception is the commitment to use natural gifts in ways that respect autonomy, consent, and truth. It is not enough to be accurate. You must also be honorable in how you apply what you perceive. Ethics begin with restraint. Just because you sense something does not mean you are meant to say it. Some insights are for your own orientation, not for public declaration. Others require timing, context, and permission. Dropping raw perception on someone who is not ready can cause more harm than good, even if your reading is correct. Ethical practitioners learn to ask, is this mine to share? Is this the right moment? Has this person invited this level of insight? Humility is another pillar. Perception, no matter how refined, is never perfect. Your history, culture, and emotional state will always color what you see. Ethical use of gifts means holding your interpretations lightly, allowing room for correction and alternative views. Phrases like, "it seems to me," "I could be wrong," but, "and does this resonate with you?" signal that you recognize the difference between perception and absolute fact. Finally, ethical perception aligns with service rather than self-importance. The point of seeing more is not to feel superior or to control outcomes. It is to reduce suffering, increase clarity, and support alignment. When you use your gifts to manipulate, shame, or posture, they eventually corrode from the inside. When you use them to illuminate, support, and empower, they deepen and stabilize, becoming more trustworthy over time. When ethics and perception walk together, your natural gifts become safe for others and sustainable for you. People learn that your presence brings clarity without judgment, insight without intrusion, and guidance without control. In a world full of confusion and projection, that combination is itself a rare and powerful gift. Part 8. Practical Self-Diagnostic Methods. 71. The Effortless Excellence Test. Effortless excellence is one of the clearest indicators of natural gifts. It occurs when you perform a task at a level far beyond what your experience or training would predict, and you do so without strain. Others may struggle to learn the same skill, requiring repetition, structure, or conscious effort. Yet for you, the learning curve feels compressed, intuitive, or naturally aligned. The ease is not laziness. It is the signature of innate design expressing itself. People often overlook effortless excellence because they were conditioned to believe that only struggle produces value. If something feels natural, they assume it is unimpressive. They downplay their clarity, intuition, perception, or creativity because they never had to grind to achieve those results. This misinterpretation hides their giftedness under false humility. They assume everyone thinks this way, learns this way, or notices the same patterns, unaware that their baseline exceeds the norm. Effortless excellence is domain-specific. A person may excel effortlessly in symbolic reasoning, but struggle with coordination. Another may intuitively understand emotional dynamics, while finding technical tasks taxing. These differences do not indicate imbalance. They reveal the diversity of human architecture. Natural gifts cluster. They concentrate in areas where your system is already wired to perform at above-average levels without excessive effort or instruction. Recognizing effortless excellence requires observation. Notice tasks you do quickly while others require long explanations. Notice activities you enjoy precisely because they feel fluid rather than burdensome. Notice moments when you produce results that surprise even you. These are not coincidences. They are evidence of underlying strength. Your system is showing you where its design supports high performance. When you acknowledge effortless excellence as a reliable indicator of your natural gifts, you shift from undervaluing your strengths to consciously developing them. You begin investing in domains where exponential growth is possible because the foundation is already built. This clarity allows you to build a life around alignment rather than resistance, maximizing what you do best instead of forcing what drains you. Effortless excellence is not privilege, it is direction. 72. The always returning theme test. One of the strongest markers of natural gifts is the persistent return to a certain theme, interest, or domain across years or decades. This return often survives burnout, life changes, or attempts to abandon it. Even when circumstances pull you in different directions, the theme resurfaces with an unusual sense of familiarity or gravitational pull. It is as if a deeper intelligence within you remains loyal to a particular expression, refusing to release its claim. These recurring themes often appear in childhood. A child repeatedly drawn to patterns may grow into an analyst, strategist, or artist. A child fascinated by people becomes a healer, counselor, or storyteller. Even if life disrupts the path, the theme reappears through hobbies, relationships, or side projects. Its endurance signals that it is not a phase, it is part of your core design. Ignoring the returning theme creates internal friction. The person may feel restless, understimulated, or vaguely dissatisfied even when life appears successful. They may sabotage stable circumstances not out of immaturity, but because their deeper nature refuses stagnation in an unrelated field. The psyche rebels when natural gifts are denied, redirecting attention toward the authentic path at inconvenient moments. To identify your returning theme, reflect on what has followed you throughout life. What do you research without being asked? What problems do you solve instinctively? What subjects stay meaningful despite changing interests? What do people consistently associate you with, even if you never announced it? These threads reveal continuity beneath the surface narrative. When you align your life with the returning theme, a sense of internal coherence emerges. Actions feel purposeful, creativity flows more easily, and personal growth becomes naturally guided. Instead of forcing progress, you follow the current already present within your design. The always returning theme is not obsession, it is orientation. It points toward the domain where your natural gifts can develop into mastery. 73. The energy gain versus drain map. Energy is one of the most reliable indicators of alignment with natural gifts. Activities that resonate with your architecture generate energy, even when they require effort. Tasks that contradict your design produce fatigue quickly, even when they are simple. This distinction between gain and drain is not about motivation or discipline. It is about how your nervous system responds to different forms of engagement. Energy gain activities often produce a sense of clarity, excitement, or momentum. Your attention sharpens, time feels different, and you recover quickly from exertion. These tasks activate natural gifts by aligning with innate strengths or cognitive patterns. You may even feel more energized after completing them than before starting. This amplification effect signals that your system is operating in its native mode. Energy drain activities feel heavier than their actual workload. Your mind fogs, your body tenses, and your patience shortens. Draining tasks may still be necessary in life, but chronic exposure to them erodes confidence and well-being. The drain is not evidence of weakness, it is evidence of mismatch. You are expending disproportionate internal resources to accomplish tasks that others might find neutral. Mapping your gain versus drain patterns requires honest observation. Track your energy after conversations, projects, environments, and relationships. Look for patterns across days or weeks. Over time, a clear map emerges. Certain interactions elevate you, certain tasks deplete you, certain roles activate your intelligence, and certain responsibilities restrict it. This map is one of the most practical tools for identifying your natural gifts. Once understood, the energy map helps you restructure your life. You allocate more time to domains that amplify your gifts and minimize exposure to chronic drains. You redesign your workflow, environment, or relationships to support your strengths. Energy becomes a compass rather than a mystery. In doing so, you cultivate a life that sustains you rather than one that silently erodes your potential. Energy gain is not indulgence, it's alignment. It signals where your natural gifts are meant to mature and where your greatest contributions will come from. Trusting this map is a form of self-respect and strategic intelligence. 74. The boundary violation indicator. Misalignment with natural gifts often shows up through repeated boundary violations. When you operate outside your authentic strengths, you become more vulnerable to overcommitment, guilt-driven decisions, and obligations that drain your time and emotional bandwidth. Your system weakens under misalignment, making it harder to assert limits. Conversely, when working within your natural gifts, boundaries become clearer and easier to defend because your internal compass is stable. Boundary violations occur when others consistently expect you to play roles that contradict your wiring. You may be pushed into caretaker roles despite lacking relational stamina, or into leadership roles despite preferring solitary work. You may feel obligated to provide emotional support you cannot sustain or intellectual labor you do not enjoy. These patterns reveal a mismatch between external expectations and internal nature. Your reaction to boundary pressure also contains diagnostic information. If enforcing a boundary feels disproportionately exhausting, confusing, or guilt-inducing, it may be because the situation deviates from your natural architecture. When you are aligned, boundaries require far less emotional labor. Your clarity strengthens resolve and reduces internal conflict, making no a natural extension of self-respect. Boundary violations also expose environments that do not recognize or support your natural gifts. Some spaces unconsciously demand conformity, penalizing difference or discouraging authentic expression. In such environments, even strong boundaries feel fragile because the cultural context works against your wiring. This tension reveals misplacement rather than personal weakness. By paying attention to where boundaries repeatedly collapse, you identify areas of life that contradict your design. Correcting this requires shifting environments, roles, or relationships rather than merely increasing willpower. As alignment returns, boundary setting becomes fluid, confident, and grounded, signaling your natural gifts are no longer being suppressed but supported. 75. The envy mirror and what it reveals. Envy is often seen as a negative emotion, but it can be one of the most accurate diagnostic tools for uncovering natural gifts. When you feel envy, not malice, but the sharp recognition that someone else is living a truth you wish you could claim, it signals a suppressed or unacknowledged aspect of your potential. Envy points to desires rooted not in fantasy, but in dormant abilities waiting for expression. Envy is precise. You may admire many people without feeling threatened or activated. But envy appears when someone embodies a version of you that feels strangely familiar, as though they are living a timeline you abandoned or never allowed yourself to pursue. This emotional response is not immaturity, it is resonance. It reflects latent capacity recognizing itself in another. Misinterpreting envy leads to self-judgment or defensiveness. You may tell yourself you are being unreasonable or competitive, but when examined carefully, envy becomes guidance. It reveals what matters deeply enough to provoke emotion. It shows you where your natural gifts have been ignored, neglected, or repressed by circumstance, conditioning, or fear. The key is distinguishing envy rooted in authentic giftedness from envy rooted in insecurity. If the path you envy feels impossible, disconnected, or irrelevant to your nature, it is likely insecurity. But if the path feels like something you could do, would enjoy, and have shown sparks of ability toward, it is a pointer. Envy illuminates hidden alignment. When you treat envy as a mirror rather than a judgment, you reclaim part of yourself. You begin exploring the capacity underneath the feeling, whether it is creative, relational, intellectual, perceptual, or spiritual. The more you follow these signals, the more integrated your natural gifts become. Envy, when honored responsibly, becomes an unexpected teacher pointing you toward your unrealized potential. 76. The compliment pattern audit. Compliments reveal what others consistently perceive as your strengths, often long before you recognize them yourself. A single compliment means little. Patterns across time form data. When different people across unrelated contexts highlight the same qualities, clarity, calmness, insight, creativity, problem-solving, humor, emotional presence, it signals an area where your natural gifts shine through your behavior effortlessly. People rarely compliment surface traits when responding to giftedness. Their feedback emerges from how your presence affects them or how your abilities shift the environment. They may say you make complex things understandable, bring stability to chaotic situations, see patterns others miss, or inspire new ways of thinking. These compliments reflect the impact of your natural architecture rather than social niceties. Yet most people dismiss repeated compliments. They assume the praises are exaggerations, politeness, or coincidence. They underestimate themselves and fail to recognize that others are witnessing authentic strengths they have normalized. This blindness stems from the fact that natural gifts feel ordinary from the inside. Because you do not struggle to perform them, you assume they are unremarkable. Auditing your compliment history involves gathering memories, messages, and observations from across your life. Look for themes that recur: calmness, leadership, empathy, strategy, storytelling, insight, creativity, or presence. These themes identify domains where your gifts consistently express themselves without conscious effort. They reveal how your strengths manifest socially and relationally. When you take these patterns seriously, you gain access to a clearer picture of your architecture. Compliments become data points that confirm alignment and direct growth. They show you not only what you are good at, but how your natural gifts positively affect others. This recognition supports confidence, reduces imposter syndrome, and guides you toward roles that fully honor your innate strengths. 77. The crisis mode reveal. Crisis compresses personality. It strips away learned behavior, social masks, and conditioned responses, revealing the core architecture beneath. How you naturally respond under pressure, whether through clarity, leadership, empathy, analysis, calmness, action, or creativity, often exposes your strongest natural gifts. These responses emerge not from preference, but from instinct, making them powerful diagnostic indicators. Some individuals become strategic in crisis, rapidly assessing variables and identifying solutions without panicking. Others become emotionally stabilizing, helping groups stay grounded. Some turn visionary, generating new possibilities when old methods fail. Others become highly focused, cutting through distractions with unusual precision. These shifts are not accidents. They reflect latent capacities activating under necessity. People often overlook crisis behaviors because they assume they are anomalies. They may label their clarity as adrenaline or insist they were just doing what anyone would do. But not everyone responds similarly. Crisis reveals differentiation. It shows what your system prioritizes and performs naturally when external pressure forces authenticity to the forefront. Analyzing past crises helps identify consistent patterns. Reflect on emergencies, conflicts, deadlines, or sudden change. What role did you instinctively take? What skills emerged without conscious effort? What did others rely on you for? What parts of yourself felt most alive, competent, or activated? These answers reveal natural gifts that may remain dormant during ordinary life. When you understand your crisis mode patterns, you gain insight into your deeper potential. You learn which strengths activate under pressure and how they can be developed intentionally. You also recognize environments where your gifts may thrive or leadership roles where they can be of service. Crisis, when interpreted correctly, becomes a lens for understanding your authentic design. 78. The stillness test. Who you are without input. Modern life overwhelms the psyche with noise, media, obligations, relationships, and constant stimulation. This makes it difficult to distinguish natural gifts from reactive habits. The stillness test removes external input to reveal your authentic baseline. When the world goes quiet, what your mind gravitates toward, what your emotions settle into, and what your curiosity awakens reflect your true orientation rather than conditioned behavior. Stillness exposes internal architecture. Some people naturally begin analyzing, reflecting, or synthesizing ideas. Others drift toward imagination, storytelling, or symbolic exploration. Some tune into bodily sensation or emotional states. Others feel pulled toward planning, structuring, or problem-solving. These spontaneous inclinations show where your system feels at home. Stillness also reveals discomfort. If silence feels intolerable, it may indicate that your natural gifts have been suppressed or overwhelmed. A gifted internal world requires space, and when that space has been denied, the system reacts with agitation or withdrawal. Observing this discomfort provides information about misalignment and areas needing restoration. The key is not forced meditation, but quiet presence. Remove distractions and notice what emerges without directive. What thoughts arise consistently? What problems does your mind attempt to solve? What inner movements feel meaningful? These are not random. They represent the domains where your natural gifts are actively trying to operate. Practicing stillness regularly strengthens your connection to your core design. You learn to differentiate internal truth from external noise, desire from intuition, and habit from giftedness. The stillness test becomes an anchor for recalibrating your life toward alignment. In that quiet, your natural gifts show themselves more honestly than in any performance or crisis. 79. The skill stack, where you learn fastest. Natural gifts reveal themselves through accelerated learning in specific domains. While most people progress linearly through new skills, gifted individuals advance rapidly in areas aligned with their architecture. This accelerated learning curve occurs because their brains already contain the perceptual frameworks necessary for mastery. They do not start from zero. They start from latent intelligence made active through exposure. To identify your skill stack, observe where learning feels intuitive. You need fewer repetitions, understand underlying principles quickly, and make connections others overlook. These skills often cluster. Creativity pairs with symbolism, strategy pairs with pattern recognition, healing pairs with empathy and regulation, communication pairs with conceptual clarity. The stack forms a cohesive ecosystem rather than isolated abilities. Misalignment shows up when individuals attempt to master skills outside their stack. They may progress slowly, feel drained, or fail to retain information easily. Society often pressures people to fix weaknesses, but this approach dilutes giftedness. True mastery emerges by developing strengths, not by forcing compatibility with unrelated skills. Your fastest growth occurs where architecture and task converge seamlessly. Evaluating your skill stack requires honest reflection. Identify skills you learned unusually fast, even if you dismissed them at the time. Notice where others seek your advice or mimic your methods. Notice which tasks you intuitively optimize without instruction. These data points reveal the architecture beneath your abilities. When you build your life around your skill stack, mastery accelerates. You compound strengths rather than dilute them. You integrate your natural gifts into coherent expertise, capable of producing meaningful impact. The stack reveals your strategic advantage, your personal blueprint for contribution. 80. The 2-year proof, sustained evidence over hype. Natural gifts are not measured by bursts of enthusiasm, but by sustained engagement across time. The 2-year proof examines whether an interest, skill, or domain continues to grow when excitement fades. Many people experience initial passion followed by rapid decline. But when something is aligned with your wiring, it persists. You return to it repeatedly, refine it consistently, and progress naturally, even during low motivation periods. The 2-year proof cuts through illusion. Anyone can be temporarily inspired by novelty or admiration. But natural gifts have endurance. They draw you back through curiosity, necessity, or inner resonance. You think about them unprovoked. You research them without obligation. You refine them even when unmotivated. This persistence results from internal architecture, not willpower. This proof also protects against self-deception. You may romanticize a path because it appears glamorous or meaningful, but if it does not sustain engagement, it is not aligned. Conversely, humble or overlooked skills may reveal themselves as authentic gifts through quiet, consistent growth over time. The 2-year proof reveals what is real beneath aspiration. To apply it, review your last 2 years, or as far back as memory allows. What have you maintained or returned to without external pressure? What skills improved even during difficult seasons? What roles have others relied on you for consistently? These patterns represent stable giftedness rather than temporary interest. When you honor the 2-year proof, you anchor your life in authenticity rather than fantasy. You recognize where your natural gifts have already demonstrated reliability and build your future accordingly. Hype fades, architecture persists. The 2-year proof reveals the difference. Part 9. Development and training without drift. 81. Choosing one gift to develop first. Choosing one natural gift to develop first is essential because growth becomes unfocused when attention scatters across multiple domains. Gifted individuals often feel pulled in many directions. Their curiosity is wide, and their abilities touch several disciplines at once. But the nervous system and psyche develop most effectively when commitment deepens rather than disperses. Selecting a primary gift does not diminish others. It establishes a foundation from which all strengths can mature coherently. A gift chosen for first development should satisfy 3 criteria. It must feel meaningful enough to sustain effort, natural enough to progress quickly, and practical enough to integrate into real life. Many choose based on excitement alone, but excitement fades. Natural alignment, however, remains steady. That steadiness indicates a structural match between your architecture and the chosen domain, making it the most efficient starting point. Fear often clouds this choice. People worry that selecting one path means losing others or missing out on potential. But early specialization is not exclusion, it is anchoring. A single well-developed gift strengthens identity, builds confidence, and creates the momentum needed to expand into other areas later. Without this anchor, gifted individuals drift between possibilities without mastery, producing fragmentation rather than growth. Choosing one gift requires honest evaluation rather than fantasy. Reflect on what has already shown evidence: effortless excellence, returning themes, accelerated learning, external validation, or energy gain. Patterns reveal the truth. When you follow the domain where evidence is strongest, development becomes strategic rather than romantic. You stop chasing potential possibilities and begin maturing actual strengths. Once you commit to developing one natural gift first, results accelerate. Skills compound, perception sharpens, and opportunities appear. This momentum spills into other gifts, allowing them to grow through synergy rather than scattered effort. Focusing on one does not reduce the whole, it activates it. A person who begins with clarity becomes capable of expanding into greater complexity with stability, confidence, and internal coherence. 82. Building structure that supports your wiring. Structure is essential for developing natural gifts because gifts do not grow reliably in chaotic environments. Even the most intuitive, creative, or spiritually oriented individuals require rhythms, boundaries, and frameworks that stabilize their development. Structure does not restrict giftedness, it channels it. Without structure, gifts remain inconsistent, appearing only during inspiration rather than transforming into consistent competence. The first task is identifying how your wiring engages with time, energy, and environment. Some people thrive with predictable routines, while others need flexible rhythms. Some require quiet and isolation. Others need strategic collaboration. Identifying your structural preferences ensures your environment supports your gifts rather than constraining them through mismatched expectations. Structure aligned with your wiring reduces friction and increases productivity. Building supportive structure also involves breaking tasks into cycles that your system can sustain. Gifted individuals often swing between intense bursts of output and extended periods of depletion. Cyclical structure, alternating focused work with deliberate restoration, allows your nervous system to maintain performance without collapse. This prevents burnout, improves clarity, and supports long-term development without self-sabotage. Boundaries are another structural component. Without them, your time and attention become fragmented by external demands. Boundaries protect the conditions needed for gifted expression, deep focus, emotional regulation, and mental spaciousness. They ensure that your energy is invested in alignment rather than scattered across obligations that dilute your growth. Boundaries are not limitations. They are reinforcement for your internal architecture. When structure reflects your natural wiring, growth becomes sustainable. You no longer rely on adrenaline or inspiration to activate your gifts. Instead, your environment, schedule, and habits work with your design. Structure becomes the scaffolding that allows your natural gifts to rise steadily, consistently, and with increasing depth, transforming potential into embodied mastery. 83. Practice rhythms and avoiding burnout. Practice rhythms determine whether natural gifts develop into stable abilities or collapse from exhaustion. Many gifted individuals approach practice with intensity rather than strategy, swinging between obsessive focus and complete withdrawal. This oscillation feels productive, but ultimately undermines progress. Sustainable practice requires calibrated pacing that respects the nervous system's limits while maximizing periods of engagement. Rhythmic practice is not rigid. It is responsive. It adapts to energy levels, emotional states, and cognitive load. Some days permit deep work. Others require integration or rest. Ignoring these rhythms forces the body into resistance, producing burnout disguised as discipline. Gifted individuals often fail here because they assume their high capacity exempts them from physiological constraints. But the more gifted the system, the more sensitive it becomes to mismanagement. Practice should be structured in intervals. Focused immersion followed by recovery creates the ideal environment for neural consolidation. During rest, the brain strengthens pathways initiated during work, allowing intuitive leaps to emerge. Giftedness naturally thrives in alternating states of concentration and reflection, not in continuous output. Recognizing this rhythm prevents depletion and enhances clarity. Burnout occurs when practice ignores psychological balance. If training becomes fueled by fear, comparison, or self-pressure, the gift contracts. When practice stems from curiosity, meaning, and alignment, the gift expands. Emotional quality shapes cognitive performance. Sustainable rhythms require maintaining internal integrity rather than chasing milestones at the cost of well-being. When practice rhythms match your wiring, development accelerates without collapse. You maintain long-term momentum, deepen skill with less resistance, and preserve the internal spaciousness necessary for gifted perception. This approach recognizes that natural gifts grow not through force, but through rhythm, respect, and intelligent pacing that nurtures capacity rather than exploiting it. 84. Feedback, mentorship, and calibration. Feedback is essential for the maturation of natural gifts because gifted individuals often cannot perceive their own blind spots. They may overestimate their clarity, underestimate their strengths, or misinterpret their limitations. Mentorship provides an external mirror that reflects what the individual cannot see from within their own architecture. Without calibration, giftedness risks drifting into distortion or stagnation. Healthy feedback is specific, grounded, and aligned with the individual's goals. It identifies what is truly working rather than what is merely impressive. It highlights patterns rather than isolated mistakes. Gifted individuals thrive when feedback challenges assumptions, sharpens methods, and expands understanding without undermining identity. Poor feedback, by contrast, suppresses giftedness by forcing conformity or diminishing originality. Mentorship accelerates development by transferring pattern recognition across generations. A mentor does not impose their path. They reveal structural truths the gifted individual has not yet articulated. They help refine technique, identify strengths, and contextualize challenges. Mentorship also stabilizes confidence by confirming that the individual's experiences are not anomalies, but signs of specific design. Calibration through feedback prevents overconfidence or self-doubt from distorting the gift. Overconfidence leads to premature mastery claims, stagnation, and resistance to correction. Self-doubt leads to underdevelopment, avoidance, and hiding. Calibration balances these extremes by anchoring giftedness in accurate self-perception. It ensures growth is rooted in evidence rather than fantasy or fear. When feedback and mentorship integrate into gifted development, the individual evolves faster and with greater integrity. They learn to discern quality, refine technique, and maintain humility. Their natural gifts become not merely raw potential, but honed capacities capable of creating meaningful impact, supported by the collective wisdom of those who walked before them. 85. Separating confidence from competence. Confidence and competence often move independently. Confidence is the belief in your ability, while competence is the actual skill level. Gifted individuals frequently experience imbalances between the two. Some possess high competence but low confidence, dismissing their strengths because they came easily. Others exhibit high confidence without equivalent competence, mistaking potential for mastery. Distinguishing the two is essential for accurate development. Low confidence paired with high competence is common among those with natural gifts because gifted performance feels effortless. Effortlessness tricks the mind into believing the ability is trivial, making individuals assume others could perform similarly with minimal training. This misjudgment leads to chronic undervaluing of strengths, reluctance to pursue opportunities, and susceptibility to imposter syndrome despite clear evidence of skill. High confidence paired with low competence arises when individuals identify strongly with a gift but have not yet developed it through practice. The emotional attachment to potential creates an illusion of readiness. This imbalance leads to overextension, disappointment, or reputational risk. It also hinders actual growth because perceived mastery replaces genuine learning. Separating confidence from competence requires evidence-based self-assessment. Ask what results you produce consistently, what others rely on you for, and what challenges recur despite effort. Competence shows up in reproducible outcomes, not in enthusiasm or aspiration. Confidence emerges naturally when competence is recognized and reinforced through practice rather than assumption. When confidence and competence align, giftedness becomes stable. You trust your strengths without exaggeration or minimization. You pursue opportunities appropriate to your level while continuing development responsibly. Balancing confidence and competence creates a foundation of integrity, humility, and reliability that allows natural gifts to flourish authentically and sustainably. 86. Strengthening weak links without losing the core. Every natural gift comes with weak links. These weaknesses are not flaws, but structural features of specialized architecture. A highly intuitive person may struggle with practical planning. A creative thinker may lack consistency. A strategic mind may overlook emotional nuance. Strengthening weak links is essential, but it must be done without diluting the core gift that makes the individual exceptional. Weak links do not require transformation, they require support. The goal is functional adequacy, not forced excellence. For example, an intuitive healer may need basic organizational systems, not a full transformation into a logistics expert. A gifted analyst may need emotional self-awareness, not a complete personality overhaul. Supportive competence stabilizes the gift without reshaping identity. The danger arises when individuals attempt to fix weaknesses by suppressing their strengths. Society often encourages this by promoting well-roundedness, which dilutes natural advantage. Gifted individuals suffer most under this model because their depth requires specialization. Trying to become good at everything weakens the core gift by dividing attention and draining energy. Strengthening weak links begins by identifying what destabilizes your gift. Does emotional overwhelm disrupt clarity? Does inconsistency undermine mastery? Does conflict avoidance weaken leadership? Focus on improving only the aspects that directly protect or enhance your core gift. This targeted approach prevents unnecessary skill building and preserves alignment. When weak links are addressed strategically, your natural gifts gain resilience. You retain your uniqueness while improving your stability. You become capable of navigating complex environments without losing access to your strengths. This creates maturity, balance, and long-term sustainability in gifted expression, allowing the core gift to shine without being undermined by preventable vulnerabilities. 87. When to specialize versus generalize. Gift development requires choosing between specialization and generalization, and the correct choice depends on your architecture. Specialization deepens mastery in a narrow domain, while generalization broadens competence across multiple fields. Gifted individuals often struggle with this choice because their natural curiosity tempts them toward breadth, while their potential thrives through depth. Understanding your wiring clarifies which path serves your long-term growth. Specialization suits individuals with strong, concentrated natural gifts that produce accelerated mastery. These individuals experience profound depth when focusing on a single domain. Their intellect sharpens, intuition strengthens, and creativity compounds. Specialization allows them to reach expert-level contribution and stand out uniquely. Their challenge is avoiding distraction and maintaining commitment when novelty beckons. Generalization suits individuals with integrative or interdisciplinary gifts. These people connect ideas across fields effortlessly, synthesizing knowledge into new frameworks. Their strength lies not in depth alone, but in bridging disparate domains. They thrive through exploration, pattern recognition, and conceptual blending. Their challenge is avoiding fragmentation and ensuring each domain receives enough development to be meaningful. The key is identifying your natural trajectory. Do you feel alive when diving deeply into a single field or when weaving many together? Does your performance accelerate through concentration or through synthesis? Do you become restless without variety or overwhelmed without focus? These questions reveal your orientation towards specialization or generalization. Choosing the correct path enhances both performance and well-being. Specialists achieve profound mastery. Generalists create expansive innovation. Both forms of giftedness contribute uniquely to the world. Aligning with your architecture ensures that your natural gifts evolve along the trajectory where they can mature, stabilize, and express their highest potential without internal conflict. 88. The gift boundary, what you will not do. Gift boundaries protect the integrity of your natural gifts by clarifying what you will not pursue, no matter how tempting the opportunity or how strong external pressure becomes. Without boundaries, gifted individuals become overloaded, misaligned, or exploited. They may be asked to perform roles adjacent to their strengths, but misaligned with their nature. Over time, these compromises dilute giftedness and distort identity. A gift boundary defines the limits of your architecture. It acknowledges that giftedness requires focus and protection. For example, a gifted counselor may refuse roles requiring high administrative burden. A visionary strategist may decline work that demands routine execution. A perceptive healer may avoid environments that chronically overload emotional bandwidth. These choices ensure that energy is invested where the gift can flourish, not fracture. Gift boundaries also shield against flattery. Gifted people often receive opportunities based on perceived potential rather than actual desire. Others may project expectations that do not align with your design. Without boundaries, you may accept roles that lead to resentment, burnout, or loss of authenticity. Boundaries protect you from saying yes to paths that undermine your core nature. Establishing boundaries requires clarity about your values, strengths, and limits. Identify tasks that consistently drain you, roles that distort your identity, and environments that suppress your gifts. These are not areas for growth. They are areas for refusal. Respecting these boundaries is an act of self-honoring and strategic intelligence. A strong gift boundary strengthens your contribution. It keeps your energy directed toward domains where your natural gifts can produce meaningful impact. You protect your architecture, preserve your integrity, and give your gifts the conditions they need to mature fully. Boundaries are not barriers. They are the structure that allows genius to remain intact. 89. Service, contribution, and real-world application. Natural gifts reach their fullest expression when they translate into service, contribution, or real-world application. Gifts are not merely internal experiences. They are capacities that become meaningful when they shape the world around you. Contribution does not require grand gestures. It begins with applying your gift where it naturally solves problems, clarifies confusion, or elevates others. The world reveals where your gifts are needed through the recurring patterns of what people seek you for. Service does not diminish the self. It strengthens it by giving purpose and direction. Many gifted individuals struggle with existential disorientation until they see their strengths reflected in the lives of others. Contribution anchors giftedness in reality, preventing it from drifting into abstraction or self-absorption. It transforms potential into impact and gives the gift a role in the collective. Real-world application requires adaptation. Raw giftedness may not immediately translate into usable form. A perceptual gift must be paired with communication. A creative gift must meet practical constraints. A strategic gift must consider human emotion. These integrations refine the gift and make it accessible to others without diluting its essence. The world becomes a training ground that sharpens your capacities through direct engagement. Service also prevents gifted stagnation. When gifts remain internal, they spiral inward, losing clarity and force. When shared responsibly, they expand, strengthen, and evolve. Contribution creates feedback loops that refine accuracy, deepen mastery, and teach humility. It ensures the gift remains dynamic rather than static. When natural gifts serve both self and world, alignment emerges. You feel purposeful, others benefit, and the gift matures through use. This balance of inner authenticity and outer impact marks the transition from giftedness to vocation. It is how your unique architecture becomes valuable to the whole. 90. Measuring growth without self-deception. Growth in natural gifts must be measured with honesty, nuance, and evidence. Gifted individuals are prone to self-deception in two directions: underestimating progress or overestimating ability. Both distortions hinder development. Effective measurement requires a balance of internal awareness and external validation, ensuring progress is real rather than imagined or dismissed. Self-deception often arises from emotional bias. Fear may cause you to overlook your improvements, while pride may inflate your sense of mastery. These distortions prevent accurate self-assessment. Measuring growth requires stepping outside emotional narratives and observing actual outcomes. What you can do consistently, how your clarity has improved, how others respond differently, and how your internal experience has shifted. Objective indicators matter. Increased accuracy in perception, stability in challenging situations, skill depth, or consistency of output demonstrate growth. Subjective indicators matter too, such as reduced overwhelm, increased fulfillment, or improved self-trust. Both sets of data reveal developmental progress and provide direction for continued refinement. Growth measurement also requires time. Natural gifts evolve in cycles, not straight lines. Some periods bring rapid advancement, others bring integration or recalibration. Judging yourself during a slower phase leads to false conclusions. Observing patterns across months or years reveals the true arc of your development and prevents reactionary self-judgment. When measurement becomes honest and holistic, development becomes grounded. You recognize strengths without inflation and acknowledge weaknesses without shame. You see where effort is working and where new strategies are needed. This clarity prevents drift and strengthens discipline, allowing your natural gifts to mature consistently and authentically. Part 10. Integration, Purpose, and a Life Built for Gifts. 91. Gifts as stewardship, not status. Natural gifts are not ornaments meant to elevate identity. They are responsibilities meant to be stewarded. When a person interprets giftedness as a form of status, they inflate ego and disconnect from the deeper purpose of their abilities. Gifts lose clarity under vanity, becoming distorted by comparison, insecurity, or the desire for recognition. Stewardship, however, frames giftedness as service, a relational exchange between self, world, and potential that asks to be honored rather than exploited. Stewardship requires recognizing that gifts originate from architecture, not superiority. Your design determines your strengths, just as another person's design determines theirs. Gifts do not make you better, they make you different. This perspective releases competition and centers responsibility, to refine your abilities, apply them ethically, and use them in ways that support growth rather than manipulation or dominance. The shift from status to stewardship deepens maturity. It prevents performance-based identity, where a person feels valuable only when displaying their gifts. Instead, the individual learns that the gift has intrinsic worth even when unseen. This protects against burnout and allows development to unfold naturally rather than being forced through external validation. The gift becomes a quiet, stable companion rather than a spotlight-driven persona. Stewardship asks whether your gifts elevate or harm. Are they used to clarify truth or to strengthen self-image? Do they support others' autonomy or subtly control outcomes? These questions refine intention and ensure the gift reflects integrity. When treated as a trust rather than a trophy, giftedness becomes grounded, ethical, and aligned with the collective good. Viewing natural gifts as stewardship shifts your relationship with them. You cultivate patience, humility, and care rather than exhibition. You understand that your abilities have impact and that this impact requires conscious guidance. Stewardship transforms giftedness from personal advantage into meaningful contribution, shaping a life where your strengths are used wisely, responsibly, and in harmony with the larger world. 92. Relationships that amplify or diminish gifts. Relationships profoundly influence the expression of natural gifts. Some connections amplify giftedness by providing emotional safety, intellectual resonance, or energetic compatibility. Others diminish it through criticism, misunderstanding, or demands that oppose your wiring. The relational field acts as either soil or erosion, determining whether your abilities develop freely or remain stunted under pressure. Understanding these dynamics clarifies why gifted expression flourishes in some contexts and withers in others. Amplifying relationships recognize your gifts without idealizing them. They offer encouragement while maintaining realistic expectations. They challenge you constructively, not competitively. Such relationships create environments where experimentation feels safe and insight is welcomed. They support authenticity, which allows gifts to surface naturally rather than being forced or hidden. These relationships often feel spacious, grounding, and intellectually or emotionally nourishing. Diminishing relationships distort or suppress giftedness. They may minimize your abilities, pathologize your sensitivity, or pressure you into roles that contradict your architecture. Even subtle invalidation can make gifted individuals doubt their perception or hesitate to use their abilities. When a relationship repeatedly triggers contraction, confusion, or self-silencing, it signals an environment incompatible with your design. Over time, this misalignment drains energy and erodes confidence. Not all diminishing relationships are malicious. Many result from mismatched wiring. A person who values stability may misunderstand someone who thrives in intuitive flow. A partner who relies on emotional logic may clash with someone who processes through analytical frameworks. These differences are manageable only when both parties respect each other's nature rather than imposing their own. When respect is absent, gifts diminish through friction rather than flourishing through diversity. Relationship assessment requires noticing how you feel before, during, and after interactions. Do you leave conversations more alive or more muted? Do your natural gifts activate or shut down? Do you feel expanded or compressed? These subtle responses reveal relational alignment more accurately than words or intentions. Your system knows when it is supported and when it is undermined. When you surround yourself with relationships that amplify your design, your natural gifts develop more rapidly and sustainably. You gain clarity, confidence, and spaciousness. You express yourself without distortion. 93. Work alignment and sustainable contribution. Work alignment determines whether natural gifts become lifelong sources of fulfillment or chronic sources of depletion. When your work matches your innate architecture, effort feels meaningful, creativity flows naturally, and long-term contribution becomes sustainable. When your work conflicts with your wiring, even small tasks feel draining, motivation collapses, and burnout becomes inevitable. Alignment is not luxury. It is biological and psychological necessity for gifted individuals. Aligned work activates your strongest cognitive, emotional, or perceptual processes. It makes use of your natural strengths rather than forcing constant compensation for weaknesses. This alignment increases efficiency because your system is not resisting the task. It enhances satisfaction because the work resonates with your deeper nature. In aligned environments, natural gifts not only function, they accelerate, deepen, and refine through real-world application. Misaligned work traps gifted individuals in a cycle of internal conflict. They may succeed externally while deteriorating internally. Their gifts remain underused, distorted, or superficially applied. This leads to frustration, existential numbness, or the sense of living someone else's life. Gifted people often endure misaligned work longer than others because their abilities allow them to function adequately even when miserable. But the cost is steep: loss of vitality, clarity, and authenticity. Identifying work alignment begins with noticing patterns, where you excel naturally, where you feel energized rather than drained, where others consistently rely on your strengths, and where your growth feels organic rather than forced. These patterns reveal the domains where your contributions are both effective and sustainable. Alignment does not require perfection. It requires coherence between your wiring and your role. When work aligns with your natural gifts, contribution becomes sustainable. You build mastery without sacrificing well-being, create impact without burning out, and maintain motivation without external pressure. Your work becomes an extension of your nature, allowing giftedness to evolve through service rather than struggle. Alignment transforms labor into purpose, making your path not only productive but deeply fulfilling. 94. Money without corruption of the gift. Money and giftedness often enter conflict when individuals fear that monetizing their natural gifts will corrupt them. This fear is not unfounded. Many lose connection to their authentic expression when financial pressure reshapes their priorities. But money itself is not the corrupting force. Misaligned incentives are. When money rewards the distortion of a gift, corruption occurs. When money supports the development and expression of a gift, integrity remains intact. The challenge lies in ensuring that financial structures do not override internal truth. A gifted healer may feel pressured to offer services that drain them. A visionary artist may alter their work to satisfy market trends. A strategist may compromise ethics for profitability. These distortions arise when individuals value external gain over internal alignment. Once a gift is shaped by fear or greed rather than authenticity, its clarity fades and its potency weakens. Healthy monetization begins with boundaries. You decide which aspects of your natural gifts are appropriate for public use and which are meant to remain private or sacred. You determine fair exchange rather than allowing others to extract your value. Clear pricing, work hours, and energetic limits protect your architecture from being worn down by demand. These boundaries ensure that money serves the gift rather than consumes it. Money becomes corrosive only when it becomes the primary driver. When used as a supportive resource, it strengthens giftedness by providing stability, tools, education, and time for deeper development. Financial support allows the gifted individual to invest more fully in their craft, refine their offerings, and share their contributions with integrity. Money is a neutral force shaped by the structure surrounding it. When you maintain alignment, money and giftedness coexist harmoniously. You contribute value authentically, receive value sustainably, and allow your natural gifts to expand without distortion. Integrity protects the gift, and the gift, in turn, provides a meaningful path for creating abundance aligned with your nature rather than opposed to it. 95. Avoiding spiritual ego and chosen one traps. Spiritual ego is one of the most dangerous distortions for people with perceptual or intuitive natural gifts. When individuals mistake sensitivity, insight, or depth for superiority, they inflate identity and disconnect from humility. The chosen one narrative emerges when a person interprets their gifts as evidence of cosmic favoritism rather than structural design. This trap sabotages growth by replacing curiosity with certainty and responsibility with entitlement. Spiritual ego thrives in environments where gifted individuals feel misunderstood. Instead of grounding their experiences in psychological, biological, or developmental frameworks, they interpret them as proof of special destiny. This interpretation isolates them, making feedback unwelcome and accountability difficult. The individual stops learning, believing they have transcended ordinary human limitations. In reality, they have abandoned the developmental process. The antidote to spiritual ego is perspective. Natural gifts do not elevate a person above others. They simply reflect difference in function. Every person has specialized wiring that supports contribution. When you recognize this universality, giftedness becomes a facet of humanity rather than an exception to it. Humility returns, not as self-denial, but as accurate self-perception grounded in reality rather than mythology. Avoiding the chosen one trap requires understanding that giftedness is not identity, it is capacity. The individual is not the gift, they are the steward of the gift. When this distinction is clear, giftedness no longer inflates self-worth. It guides responsibility rather than ego. The person becomes capable of growth, correction, and collaboration because they no longer need to defend a fragile superiority narrative. When spiritual ego dissolves, giftedness stabilizes. Insight becomes clearer, intuition becomes more accurate, and connections deepen because the individual is no longer performing exceptionalism. They become genuinely exceptional through humility, embodiment, and integrity. This grounded approach allows natural gifts to mature without distortion, serving truth rather than fantasy. 96. Reclaiming gifts after suppression. Many people lose connection to their natural gifts due to childhood conditioning, adult responsibilities, traumatic experiences, or years spent in misaligned environments. Suppressed gifts do not disappear, they retreat. They go dormant, resurfacing only in dreams, instincts, or brief moments of clarity. Reclaiming suppressed gifts requires both courage and patience because the process involves confronting the reasons the gifts were abandoned in the first place. Suppression often begins in childhood. A sensitive child may be shamed for crying too easily. An analytical child may be punished for asking too many questions. A creative child may be mocked for imagination. These early messages redirect the individual away from their nature, teaching them survival strategies that contradict their wiring. Reclamation requires identifying these messages and releasing their authority over your identity. Trauma also suppresses giftedness. When survival becomes the primary focus, the psyche narrows its range. Gifts requiring openness, intuition, empathy, creativity, perception, contract to protect the individual. Reclaiming them involves healing the nervous system, restoring safety, and expanding tolerance for vulnerability. This process is gradual but transformative, allowing gifts to surface without overwhelming the system. Reclamation requires revisiting past expressions of your giftedness. What did you love before you learned to fear judgment? What came naturally before criticism redirected you? What sparks of brilliance appeared before adulthood buried them under responsibility? These memories act as clues guiding the return journey. As you reconnect with them, latent capacities awaken, often with surprising speed. When suppressed gifts return, they feel familiar yet renewed. They carry depth shaped by lived experience and perspective shaped by hardship. Reclamation is not regression, it is restoration. You reclaim not the gift you once had, but the version capable of maturing in your present self. This integration empowers your natural gifts to re-enter your life with clarity, strength, and rightful prominence. 97. The long arc. Gifts evolve with the self. Natural gifts are not static traits. They evolve alongside identity, experience, and perspective. Early expressions often appear as raw talent, bright but unrefined. Over time, life challenges introduce complexity that deepens the gift. Authenticity expands it. Maturity stabilizes it. The gift evolves in stages, each shaped by the lessons, wounds, and wisdom accumulated along the long arc of development. The early phase is intuitive and instinctual. The individual expresses their gift without self-awareness or mastery. They operate on raw potential. The mid-phase introduces refinement and structure. This is where discipline, feedback, and intentional development shape the gift into a reliable capacity. The late phase transforms the gift into wisdom. Its application becomes effortless, ethical, and integrated. Resistance to evolution traps gifted individuals in outdated forms of their abilities. They cling to early expressions rather than growing with life's demands. For example, A perceptive child who used intuition to navigate chaos may struggle to update their gift once safety is established. Their gift evolves only when identity evolves. This relationship between self and ability is inseparable. The long arc also reveals that some gifts emerge later in life. Experiences awaken dormant capacities once the psyche is ready for them. Healing unlocks depth. Maturity unlocks clarity. Certain insights, strengths, or sensitivities become accessible only after foundational aspects of the self have developed. This timing is natural and should not be rushed. When you honor the long arc of your giftedness, you stop forcing outcomes. You allow your natural gifts to unfold in harmony with your personal evolution. This creates a relationship with your abilities that is fluid, compassionate, and sustainable. The gift becomes a lifelong companion, transforming as you transform, revealing deeper layers of purpose as you grow. 98. Turning gifts into teaching without preaching. Sharing your natural gifts through teaching is one of the most powerful forms of contribution, but it must be done with humility and clarity to avoid preaching. Teaching invites others into understanding. Preaching imposes understanding onto others. The distinction lies in intention and method. Teaching offers insight as a resource. Preaching delivers insight as an authority. Gifted individuals must discern this difference to ensure their contribution uplifts rather than alienates. Effective teaching begins with listening. You must understand the learner's context, readiness, and needs. Natural gifts often create blind spots here because gifted individuals process information quickly and instinctively. They may forget that others require more steps, explanations, or examples. Teaching requires slowing perception down, translating intuitive leaps into accessible concepts, and meeting people where they are rather than where you operate. Preaching emerges when the gifted individual becomes attached to being right. They elevate their perspective above others, dismiss nuance, or assume their way is the only valid path. This shuts down relational connection and often triggers resistance. Teaching, by contrast, invites collaboration. It offers frameworks, questions, and possibilities rather than conclusions. It respects autonomy and encourages exploration rather than obedience. Teaching also requires vulnerability. You must share not only your giftedness but the journey behind it, your mistakes, uncertainties, and evolving understanding. This transparency dismantles hierarchy and builds trust. Learners feel guided rather than judged. They become willing to try, fail, and grow because the teacher has modeled humility rather than perfection. When natural gifts become teaching tools rather than platforms for preaching, they multiply their impact. You empower others to develop their own strengths rather than depend on yours. You contribute to collective growth rather than personal elevation. Teaching becomes an act of service, turning your giftedness into a doorway others can walk through on their own terms. 99. Living in alignment under real constraints. Living in alignment with your natural gifts is not an idealistic fantasy. It requires navigating real-world constraints, financial pressure, family obligations, health limitations, and cultural expectations. Alignment does not mean freedom from difficulty. It means choosing the path that harmonizes with your design, even within the boundaries of circumstance. Giftedness becomes practical when it adapts to reality rather than resisting it. Constraints are not enemies of giftedness. They are shaping forces. They teach discipline, focus, and resourcefulness. A gifted individual who navigates obstacles develops resilience and maturity that pure ease cannot produce. Constraints refine gifts by forcing creative problem-solving and prioritization. They reveal what matters most and eliminate distractions that dilute growth. Misalignment occurs when individuals interpret constraints as justification for abandoning their nature. They suppress their gifts to fit roles, expectations, or survival strategies. Over time, this creates internal deadness, frustration, or anxiety because the self cannot thrive in conditions that contradict its architecture. Alignment requires working with constraints rather than surrendering to them. The key is making microalignments, small, consistent decisions that honor your wiring even when full freedom is not available. You dedicate time to your gift, redesign routines, create supportive environments, or shift the meaning of work. These adjustments restore energy and clarity, allowing giftedness to remain active rather than dormant. Over time, microalignments accumulate into major life changes. Living in alignment under constraints builds authenticity. You become someone who honors their truth while navigating reality with intelligence and adaptability. You remain connected to your natural gifts without denying the complexity of life. This integration creates a stable path where giftedness and responsibility coexist, shaping a grounded and meaningful existence. 100. The Natural Gifts Life Plan. The Natural Gifts Life Plan is not a rigid roadmap. It is a dynamic orientation that evolves as you do. It begins with identifying your innate architecture, your effortless strengths, returning themes, energy patterns, and dominant perceptual styles. Once understood, these elements guide your decisions about work, relationships, environment, and contribution. The plan aligns your life with your wiring rather than forcing your wiring to accommodate a mismatched life. The first phase is clarity. You explore who you are beneath conditioning, survival strategies, and external expectations. You map your giftedness using evidence rather than fantasy. This clarity restores connection to your authentic trajectory. The second phase is alignment. You restructure your life gradually so that your habits, roles, and relationships support rather than suppress your giftedness. Alignment turns insight into lived reality. The third phase is mastery. You refine your natural gifts through deliberate practice, mentorship, and real-world application. You learn to navigate weaknesses without diluting strengths. You cultivate discernment, regulation, and ethical integrity. Mastery transforms giftedness into reliable contribution, allowing your impact to deepen and stabilize across time. The final phase is contribution, where your gifts serve both you and the collective good. The plan is cyclical, not linear. You revisit clarity as you evolve, adjust alignment as life changes, refine mastery through experience, and expand contribution through opportunity. The Natural Gifts Life Plan adapts to transitions, challenges, and growth. It never demands perfection, it demands authenticity. When you live according to this plan, your life becomes coherent. Your actions align with your nature. Your growth aligns with your values. Your contribution aligns with your architecture. You stop living reactively and begin living intentionally, guided by the blueprint within you. This is the fulfillment of natural gifts, not as fantasy, identity, or performance, but as a lived path of truth, purpose, and integration. 49. Balance. When gifts become compulsions. Natural gifts become compulsions when they operate automatically rather than intentionally. Individuals feel obligated to use the gift in every situation, even when misaligned with context. A strategist may overanalyze simple interactions. A healer may take responsibility for emotions that do not belong to them. A communicator may feel compelled to mediate every conflict. Compulsion transforms the gift from an asset into a burden. Compulsive expression usually stems from identity fusion. Individuals begin believing their value lies solely in performing the gift. This belief often forms in childhood when praise becomes conditional. A child rewarded only when helpful becomes hyper-responsible. A child valued for insight becomes performative. These patterns persist into adulthood, creating roles that obscure authentic autonomy. Compulsion drains energy because it forces the nervous system into constant activation. Gifts require rhythmic engagement, not perpetual deployment. When individuals cannot disengage, they lose access to rest cycles that restore clarity and increase precision. Over time, burnout erodes the quality of the gift, leading to confusion and self-doubt. Breaking compulsion involves reclaiming choice. Individuals must recognize when the gift activates automatically and learn to pause before responding. They set boundaries on when and how the gift is used, restoring balance to their relational and internal world. This recalibration strengthens the gift because it is no longer diluted through overuse. Balanced gifts operate with intention. They become reliable tools rather than reflexive behaviors. Individuals who achieve this balance experience renewed vitality, deeper mastery, and healthier relationships because their contributions emerge from alignment rather than obligation. 50. Integrating gifts without inflating identity. Integrating natural gifts requires humility, self-awareness, and grounded responsibility. Gifts reveal potential, not superiority. Identity inflation occurs when individuals attach their worth to their abilities rather than their character. They may use their gifts to bypass emotional growth, avoid vulnerability, or assert dominance. This distortion disconnects the gift from its purpose and destabilizes the individual's sense of self. Inflated identity often develops when gifts are recognized early without the guidance necessary for maturity. Praise reinforces talent but neglects character. The individual begins equating ease with exceptionalism, creating fragility when confronted with limitation. They avoid feedback, cling to certainty, or dismiss others' perspectives, weakening the actual strength of the gift. Integration requires acknowledging limitations alongside strengths. Every gift exists within a larger ecosystem of human capacities, none more valuable than the others. When individuals accept this interdependence, humility emerges naturally. Humility does not minimize the gift, it stabilizes it, ensuring it remains functional rather than performative. True integration also requires purpose. Gifts must be connected to meaningful contribution rather than egoic identity. When individuals use their architecture in service of coherence, growth, or understanding, the gift matures. Identity becomes grounded in values rather than abilities, making the person resilient to change, challenge, or failure. When integrated, natural gifts become steady, reliable, and ethical. They strengthen relationships rather than distort them. They enhance clarity rather than cloud judgment. Integration transforms giftedness from personal ornament into collective benefit, allowing individuals to embody their architecture without inflation or insecurity.